Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen keeps stealing OP's food and really ends up regretting it. Coworker kept stealing my food, now she's in the hospital. Am I the jerk? For the past 3 months, someone at my job has been consistently stealing my food that I bring from home so I don't have to use the snack machine or walk across the street to McDonald's like the majority of my coworkers do. In the first month, I noticed someone had been gradually taking some of my food. 1 out of 3 slices of pizza, gone. 20% of my soup, gone. Cheetos bag, completely gone, etc. Didn't think much of it and simply decided to now attach a "please don't touch" paper sign on my stuff. In the second month, at the start of the month, my food became untouched but progressively went back to the usual. At the beginning of the third month, I asked coworkers if they had taken or knew who was taking my food, but no one had a clue, which was kind of believable as most of us take our lunches separately. I decided to eat McDonald's or go to 7-Eleven and stop bringing food, but then it started messing with my financial stability. It gets expensive when you have to buy lunch every day. I decided to take matters into my own hands. My friend told me about a reel that she saw where a girl put laxative into her own food to see who the culprit was, and that's exactly what I did. What I wasn't expecting was for the girl, late 20s, to have an allergic reaction to an ingredient and ended up going to the hospital. After work, all of us went to visit her in the hospital where we all talked about what happened and I admitted to putting laxatives in my own food. 6 out of 8 coworkers, all girls, were disgusted by my actions and were on her side. 1 girl was whatever about it, and the last guy said she shouldn't have been touching my food to begin with. I told the girl that I hope she gets better and I went home, but I didn't apologize for what I did and I'm not going to. Today, my day off, I received a phone call from our supervisor, who I spoke to about my issue after the first month of it happening, and she told me she couldn't help me because she's not our mom, and essentially told me I had to apologize to her or else I wouldn't be able to come back to work until I do. And I'm assuming if I take too many days, I'd just be fired for not coming to work. Update 1. Just received a text from my supervisor telling me the coworker doesn't need to apologize and it's up to her discretion if she chooses to apologize or not for stealing my food. Update 2. I'm a male for those wondering. Many of the "you're the jerk" voters are forgetting the fact that my "please do not touch" sign never left. Even though it stopped working eventually, I still kept it there. So when she took my laxative food from my plastic bag, the sign "please don't touch my food" was still on it. And to answer questions I keep seeing, 1. She's not poor. She drives a 2020 Lexus. 2. I live in Southern California. 3. Doctors said the allergic reaction might have been laxative or my food, which was chicken noodle soup that I made from scratch at home the morning of. They're still running tests. Not the jerk. In shared refrigerators, I put a label that says, "Caution, contains Miralax laxative." Have I ever used or even bought Miralax? No. But does my food get stolen anymore? Also no. All you have to do is tell HR, those laxatives were for my use. I do not like the taste of it, so I mixed it with my food. I warned you that someone was stealing food, but you decided it was a non-issue. Am I the jerk for canceling all of our streaming services to hire a housekeeper without asking my husband first? I'm 28, female. My husband, who's 30, and I just welcomed our first baby almost 3 months ago. Understandably, it's been a huge adjustment for both of us. She's still not sleeping through the night, and we're both back to work full-time. We've always split household responsibilities 50-50, just helping where needed, and it's always worked out well. Lately, my husband has been doing the chores poorly, and I've had to go behind him to fix things or clean them again. For example, he cleaned the bottles the other night, but they were so poorly cleaned that I had to redo them. He dropped pump parts down the disposal and then ran it, ruining them. Several clothes weren't cleaned after a blowout and are now ruined. There are more instances like this. I've confronted him a few times, letting him know that we all make mistakes and I understand we're both tired, but it feels like he's not even trying. He just keeps saying that he's exhausted and struggling with working, taking care of the house, and caring for the baby. I do sympathize, as I'm also working, pumping, recovering, and taking care of the house and baby. The final straw for me was when he told me to go to sleep while he put up the milk I had just pumped and finished the dishes. I was so grateful until I woke up and realized the milk had been left on the counter and was no longer good. He apologized, saying he had put on a show to relax before doing the dishes and fell asleep. The next day, I decided to cancel all of our streaming services, PlayStation Plus, and theme park passes in order to hire a housekeeper. I figured if he's too tired to do basic household chores, then a housekeeper is necessary. If he's too tired to put the milk away, then he's too tired to play video games or go to a theme park. We still have cable, PlayStation games, and can do other activities outside of the local theme park. He blew up at me, saying I had no right to do that and was furious. I thought I was doing us a favor so we could get more sleep and not worry as much about household tasks. So, am I the jerk for hiring a housekeeper without asking? Edit. I see a lot of comments about communication. I have been communicating non-stop about my needs and expectations. I've let a lot of mistakes slide because I know this is hard for both of us, but when it became a daily thing, I let him know if he's unable to do his part, then I need additional help. I mentioned hiring help, and he laughed and said, "What a ridiculous waste of money." I knew if I asked again, the answer would be no, so I made the decision for both of us. Also, I didn't throw away the TV or PlayStation, I just canceled our subscriptions. We were paying around $100 between the two. Our internet includes a handful of cable channels and Peacock, and we have plenty of PlayStation games that we can still play. We both play video games and watch TV. I probably watch more on streaming, so canceling them affects both of us. Housekeeping is $300 a month, and everything I canceled, including Disney passes, is almost $230, so it won't be as much of a financial burden. Wait, did you cancel these things in order to afford the cleaner service, or did you cancel it because you think it's taking up time? OP, from someone who went through this with twins, what you're going through is normal when the babies come home. It's exhaustion, depression, etc. I did eventually get a nanny after my wife kept asking for one. What you have to realize is that not everyone can handle being sleep deprived the same way. In my household, it was the opposite. I'm used to operating with less sleep due to work. My wife isn't. You have two zombies walking around and annoying each other, and the infant doesn't help. You should have discussed this as a couple and came to this decision together. Canceling everything was a power move to punish him for making mistakes. If it wasn't, why did you just do it without talking it out first? I gave into a nanny even though I didn't think we needed it. But at the end of the day, it was for the sanity of my wife. You have to work as a team. Get through the next 6 months somehow, and you'll be golden. Edit. You're the jerk. Sorry. Everyone sucks here. You say you did this as a favor, but you know it was in retaliation because you were frustrated, and you do have every right to be frustrated, to be clear. But this was an impulsive decision based on frustration as a way to punish him, not as a favor. Don't pretend otherwise. You were mad, so you lashed back. It happens. He's 100% a bigger jerk here. He can't use his tiredness as an excuse when you're doing what he's doing and more with a body that just went through pregnancy and labor. I do understand he's tired and stressed, and I'm sure he's trying, but clearly is to the point where he needs to step up more. Hiring a housekeeper, if he isn't willing to put in the effort to do so, is a good idea, but it needed to be a conversation first. Because yes, he was in the wrong, but that doesn't mean you make a unilateral decision for a major expense like this, which is also letting a new person into the home and around your family. That's something that should have taken you both more time to research and agree on. He's the main jerk here. I can't imagine how frustrating it was to see that he let the milk spoil, so I definitely don't blame you for getting frustrated, and I understand how it led you to retaliating this way. Getting sick of relying on someone who is unreliable is more than understandable. This decision definitely still needed to be a conversation. Not the jerk, and ignore all of these comments saying that you didn't communicate. Yes, you did. You repeatedly communicated that he was not following through on his share of the household responsibilities. What he was doing so poorly that you had to redo it for him. Weaponized incompetence is a thing. You're the one who gave birth and you're pumping. But the dude who is not recovering from childbirth and literally producing the food for a living being is more tired and somehow can't even manage the chores he's doing correctly? No way. But use some of that extra money you've saved by getting yourself into marriage counseling, because the opinions of random Redditors is not the right choice for how to handle your situation. I, 32 female, think that I may have to break up with my fiance, who's 35, after he embarrassed me in public over a sandwich. My partner and I have been together for over 9 years, and honestly, the first 4 to 5 years were awesome. I had genuinely never felt this way about anyone in my life, but things started going south after that. I began to realize that he always had an excuse for not helping me cook or clean the house, no matter how much I begged and pleaded for help. He started making me feel like visiting my family was inconveniencing him. He'd make snide remarks the whole time, which makes the entire trip miserable to the point of me crying. I know it might sound dumb, but I've even started having panic attacks because of how bad he makes the holidays. He doesn't attempt to communicate in a healthy way, and it honestly feels like he waits until the very last moment to apologize, if he does at all. I've been at the last straw point for a few years now, but I always end up forgiving him because I love him. It's kind of like saying, when it's great, it's really great, but when it's bad, it's really bad. Okay, so now let's move on to a few days ago when he lost it in public over a sandwich. We had the same day off, so we decided to run some errands and go to a sandwich shop for lunch. Honestly, the first half of the day was great until it was time for lunch. We walked in, and because it was noon, the place was packed. Unfortunately, there was only one person working, so we had to wait in line for about 20 minutes. Is it frustrating waiting in line that long? Yes, but I tried to keep things as positive as I could because I know he gets irritated easily. We overheard the employee telling others in front of us that some ingredients were either completely out or just had gone bad. It could have been due to the hurricane outage the week before. We didn't get hit horribly, but we did lose some power. I'm also not 100% sure what was going on. Also, for a little backstory, I had an ex who worked at this particular sandwich chain. He got me hooked on this sandwich that I've been eating since I was about 18 or 19, and I introduced it to my current fiance. We always get the same thing whenever we go there. So finally it was our turn, and we got everything started. Bread, meat, cheese, and thrown in the toaster. The employee brought it out, and I told her the next ingredient. Lots of spinach. She looked at me and broke the news that the spinach had gone bad. Bummer. But you know what? Whatever. It's not the end of the world, right? My fiance, standing next to me, goes,
Are you serious? Dude, this is ridiculous. She did this on purpose. We're leaving. Come on.
And then just storms out, leaving me standing in the shop while everyone in the entire place stops and either watches the situation or looks uncomfortable. Just think about how you feel when you see a Karen in the wild, but it was my partner. I just want to throw in that I have extreme social anxiety, and he's absolutely aware of that. So I'm standing there and quietly tell the employee that he's upset and I think we might just head out. She hits me with, "Nah, if you leave, I'm calling the cops." My anxiety skyrockets. I look at my phone and my partner has texted me,
Get that food and we're done.
"The cops and I'm being broken up with?" I texted him that he left me in a bad situation and he knows how bad my anxiety is. Then the employee tells me, "I can't believe you would come in here, know that we're low on ingredients, and then waste what little we have." I mean, she's right. I was seriously just going to get lettuce instead of spinach, but now I'm standing there, being threatened by everyone for something that I didn't even do. I get another text from my partner.
Forget it. Find someone else to come and get you.
Great. I'm now stranded here. I finish building the sandwiches, pay, and try to hide behind my bag of food, hoping that he's still there, and thankfully he is. Unfortunately, the whole ride home, he blamed me, told me that I'm not a team player and that I chose my side, all while screaming at the top of his lungs. I was bawling. I haven't spoken to him in about 3 days. He sent me a text about how sorry he was, but I'm feeling fed up with all of it. I also have a family event tomorrow that I guess I can't attend because he has the only vehicle, so I'm going to have to disappoint my family once again. I don't know. I'm just stressed out and not sure what to do anymore. I think this is a wonderful wake-up call telling you that you need to be done because this isn't how you want to be treated by your partner. My husband is an overgrown child and I think I've reached my breaking point. We've been married for 4 years and together for 7. We have 2 kids, a daughter who's 4 and a son who's 2. I'm really not sure where to start. My husband is an overgrown child. He just doesn't know when it's time to be serious. This is the only problem in our marriage. He's extremely loving, affectionate, and kind, and he loves being a dad. He loves our kids more than anything, and they love him as well. He's constantly playing with them, and I think this is where the issues start to arise. My husband cannot understand when it's time to put playtime on pause. I'm serious when I say he's in playmate mode with our kids from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. This results in extremely hyperactive kids in the morning when I'm trying to get our daughter ready for kindergarten. It's extremely frustrating to struggle with getting her fed, cleaned, dressed, and out the door on time for school, where he then drives her. At night, this results in hyperactive kids who can take up to 2 hours to settle down and go to bed. By then, it's way past their bedtime, and they sometimes wake up grumpy in the morning because they didn't get enough sleep. He will sometimes even egg them on at night when we're sitting with them in bed trying to wind them down to sleep. It's incredibly infuriating, and I will tell him to stop because I'm clearly trying to get them to sleep, and all he's doing is keeping them up. He laughs and says he's just having fun. My husband doesn't do hard discipline. He tells our kids to stop fighting each other or stop touching fragile objects, but when it comes to timeouts or taking away things like dessert, certain toys, or TV time, he all but refuses. He leaves me to be the bad guy, and I'm absolutely sick of it. I'm tired of feeling like the mean mom who doesn't like fun or has to ruin their fun, but he just won't do it. I've told him that he needs to stop leaving all the hard discipline up to me. He says he will, but then he leaves it all up to me again next time. I dread when the kids are older and things like grounding become a thing. My husband is constantly breaking their toys because he wants to play with them. He's broken a little trampoline that we got for them because he wanted to jump and play on it with them. He's broken their toddler-sized motorized cars by sitting on them and riding around with them. I look out the window and see him riding around on these things, having the time of his life. Meanwhile, our kids are standing on the edge of the yard watching him and waiting for their turn. He's broken a little basketball hoop we got for them by pretending to be on a pro basketball team and doing dunks, which bend and break the hoop. Our daughter's birthday was last month, and one of our friends bought her a little scooter. My husband broke it within a week because he wouldn't stop playing and doing tricks on it every time he stepped outside the house for something. Our daughter was devastated because she loved that thing, even more so because she loves our friend who gave it to her, so to her, it was extra special. I also feel terrible that this toy my friend spent her money on was destroyed by my husband before my daughter barely got to play with it. Now, my husband is 6 feet tall and about 20 pounds overweight. He has absolutely no business playing on these kids' toys, and I've told him time and time again to stop playing on them because they aren't made for a person his size and that he will break them. And then he does. He'll sheepishly carry the broken toy to me and say, "Sorry," but then he's back at it again, destroying another toy shortly after. We got our daughter a bike for Christmas so she can start learning, and I don't even want to give it to her because I know he'll ruin it for her like he always does with their toys. These are just some of the bigger broken toy examples. There are also countless smaller things of theirs that he's broken, like balls, dolls, little cars, a dollhouse, a slide, etc. He's always making our kids play with them, even when they clearly don't want to or just want to chill out and relax, like sitting and watching a movie. This mostly applies to our son, who is much more introverted and sensitive than our daughter and usually prefers calm and quiet interaction over the loud and hyperactive playtime my husband always does. A handful of times, he has frustrated and overwhelmed our son by continuously pushing him to play, resulting in our son starting to cry because he just wants to be left alone. Now, finally, onto what prompted me to post here. My husband is always telling our kids, and everyone else, that our kids are his best friends. Since our daughter started learning to talk, he's trained her to answer the question, "Who's your best friend?" with "Daddy." Our son is in early talking stages, and he's starting to train him to do this as well. At first, I didn't see any issues with this and actually thought it was cute, but our daughter has made a really good friend, 5, who I'll call Emily, at school this year. Our daughter is always talking about Emily and asking if Emily can come over or if she can go to Emily's house. Today, my husband asked our daughter, "Who's your best friend?" And our daughter paused for a moment, got a huge grin on her face, and then said, "Emily." It looked like my husband had just been given the worst news of his entire life. He asked her, "What?" And our daughter started giggling. "Emily," she said it again. My husband said, No, who's your best friend?" And again, still giggling, she said Emily. My husband's face went blank, and he immediately removed himself from her and went to the other room. Our daughter seemed a little confused, but mostly undisturbed, and went back to watching cartoons. I followed him and asked him what was wrong, and when he started talking, I realized he was beginning to cry. He told me that he's supposed to be our daughter's best friend, and that he can't believe she would toss him aside like that. Up until now, like I had said, I thought this best friend thing was cute. I never realized how serious he took it. If I had, I would have tried to put a stop to it early on. I was a bit shocked at this point, and I admit I didn't use as much tact in my response as I probably could have. I asked him if he was serious. He said, "Of course I am." I told him that he's the parent. He's not supposed to be a best friend to his kids. He's supposed to be the parent. And he's 29 years older than her. Of course, she's going to eventually make friends her own age and start considering them her best friends. He told me I don't understand, and I told him he was being ridiculous and childish. He told me I was being heartless, accused me of not wanting him to have a good relationship with our kids, and left the house early to go to work. I have no idea what to do. I feel insane, and I haven't been able to talk to any friends about this because I feel like they'll all say, "So you're mad at your husband for playing with the kids? What's wrong with you?" But I just don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how to address these issues with my husband in a way he'll understand, so he'll start being reasonable about them. I also feel extremely anxious about everything now because my husband and I have been trying for the last 2 months to conceive another baby, and now I don't want to bring another child into the world without having this mess sorted out. I know telling my husband I want to wait on this third child will devastate him. Update. So I sat my husband down and we had a long talk. I told him that I know he loves playing with the kids, and I love that he loves playing with them, but I really need him to work with me during bedtime. I also once again pointed out that their lack of sleep is making them grumpy and harder to manage in the mornings, and that they're growing and they need their sleep. He's had a couple of slip-ups since, but he's cooled it down around bedtime now and makes more of an effort to help me with bedtime. He started reading to them instead. I used to do it, and is 20 times better than me at it because he makes up the silliest voices for characters, and our kids are obsessed. They also fall asleep within a reasonable time frame now, and it's been much easier in the mornings. On discipline, he was more defensive about this. He told me he didn't want to scare them or hurt their feelings. I told him that discipline was important for them to grow into well-adjusted adults, and he knows I'm right, but it's just hard for him to actually do it. We've been working through this together though, and he's been much better about actually disciplining them when they misbehave, instead of telling them to stop and then ignoring them when they continue. So far, it's going well. On breaking their toys, this was the one that hit him the hardest. He was devastated when I pointed out he's broken all of their toys. He truly didn't realize the extent of it, especially the ones that are special to them, like the scooter from my friend. I brought up that my friend spent her money on that scooter and our daughter loved it, but my friend can't keep buying our daughter new scooters every time he breaks them, and I was tired of seeing our kids' faces fall when they saw that yet another toy was broken. He was honestly ashamed and apologized repeatedly. He hasn't broken a single toy since, which was a huge relief for me and the kids. He didn't seem to realize that our son doesn't enjoy the kind of loud and rambunctious play our daughter does. Since we've talked, he's been doing much better and has been very calm and relaxed when he's playing with our son now, and our son seems to enjoy playtime much more. On calling them his best friends, my husband didn't realize how strongly he was reacting when our daughter said her friend was her best friend. He explained that growing up, his dad wasn't the best father, so he wanted to make sure his kids had a father they loved and had a good relationship with. He took that to the extreme and said he now realizes that being their best friend isn't as important as being their parent. He said he will stop calling them his best friends and encourage them to make friends with other kids their own age. We also talked about my fears of having a third child with all these issues unresolved, and he agreed that he wanted to work on himself before we try again. I feel relieved, and I feel like we made a huge amount of progress from where we were before. I'm hoping for the best future now. Would I be the jerk if I told a family friend that we don't want cookies as a gift for Christmas anymore? Context. My brother and I, 30s, male and female, live together, and we don't have our parents anymore because they both passed within our lifetime. One of my parents had a best friend who we'll call Emily, who's in her 60s. Emily has been a wonderful family friend to us ever since we were kids, and she's become like a second mother to us. However, for the last few years, she's been sending us cookies as Christmas gifts. These aren't homemade cookies, they're from a catalog, and to be honest, they taste like cardboard. As a result, we don't eat them, and they expire to the point of becoming inedible because they get so stale. I truly hate wasting food, especially because it could go to people who are struggling to eat. I've tried donating the cookies as soon as possible, but our schedules always get in the way. Holiday hours and other events make it difficult to find a time to donate them before they expire. Many places either close too early, or by the time we can donate, the cookies have already gone stale. So my brother and I concluded that we have to tell Emily, while we appreciate the thought and all, that we don't want any more of these cookies for Christmas, especially since we don't eat them. We feel bad because Emily spends her hard-earned money on a gift that goes to waste every year. However, here's where I may be the jerk. I talked to my therapist about it, and she told me, it's usually the thought that counts. You might hurt her feelings if you tell her. Just to clarify, we're not asking for another gift or anything. We just don't want her to waste her money on something we don't eat. We wouldn't mind not getting a gift at all. We just don't want the cookies anymore because they go to waste. They taste awful, and we can't even find the time to donate them. So Reddit, would I be the jerk for politely telling Emily that we don't want any more cookies for Christmas? You would be the jerk if you told her that you don't want the cookies she's been giving you for the past several years and making her feel like all her gifts were unwanted. But if you happen to drop into conversation that you feel so much better after cutting back on sweet treats and replacing it with tea or something similarly able to be shopped for from said catalog, then she might change what she gets you to something that you could actually use. If not, and she still gives you cookies, smile and show gratitude for the appreciation and recognition of your friendship. How about, and this might sound crazy to you, smile and say, thank you so much. It costs you nothing to be kind to Emily. Throw them away, donate them, re-gift them, who cares? You're the jerk. You and your brother are total jerks. Let this lady give you cookies, just throw them away. Anytime I get a gift I don't want, I just throw it away. I have lots of relatives, so got all kinds of MP3 players, laptops, junk like that growing up. I say junk because my parents bought me new Apple products every year, so I had no need for the crap my relatives bought me. I just threw it all away. There is never a point in keeping junk you don't actually want. Edit. Get over yourselves. If you can't afford your own crappy tech, that doesn't mean I'm inclined to give you mine. That's a you problem. Boss tries to give disciplinary action for working too hard. Midway through my career, I found myself working for the most prominent private college in my state. I was in the IT department and was in charge of maintaining a few servers and all of the technology in classrooms. Every summer, we would receive our budget for the year, and the part of the budget I managed was spent mostly on upgrading the audio and visual presentation systems in the classrooms, and most of that work had to take place during the summer. This is fine, normally, but our college administration had created a ticking time bomb for me a few years before. They had decided to spend about $100,000 on a few classrooms, but did not allocate any money in our budget to replace that equipment when it would eventually fail. I had been there for 5 years, and now that equipment was starting to fail. Increasing our budget was not an option, despite faculty growing to depend on the equipment in these spaces. I was left to figure out how to make this same budget replace all of the equipment in those spaces, as well as the normal set of classrooms that would need to be upgraded elsewhere. Fine, I was up for the challenge. I had to simplify and purchase more value brand of equipment and do extra work to cut corners. A couple of weeks of shipping delays for the majority of the equipment saw me with roughly 1 month to rip out, replace, rewire, and configure around 15 classrooms, as well as update and test all of the existing classrooms within about a month before the semester began. Realizing the amount of work ahead of me, I began working. I came in every day of the week for 28 days straight, working 8 to 10 hours to ensure that when the semester began, the professors would have working equipment. I was salaried, so I did not have to clock in. This gave me the freedom of scheduling work as little or as much as required. I worked myself sick and was literally sick at the end of the 28 days. My supervisor was a guy we recently hired. Let's call him Gus. Near the beginning of the semester, while testing equipment, I realized that the audio driver in a common model of computer we have in the classrooms was corrupted. Investigating it, I realized that the computer manufacturer had corrupted drivers on their web server where we downloaded it from. I asked my supervisor, who was in charge of managing the image deployment server, to rebuild the image with a non-corrupt version of the driver I had provided him. He said he would. I swing by the next day and ask him if he had completed the rebuild. He had not. I tell him I really need it as the semester loomed closer and closer, and he tells me he will work on it. Next day, nothing. Day after that, nothing. Finally, he figures it out, and I continue my work. He must not have liked being pressured, and perhaps the perception that he was incompetent. He must have gotten to him. He decides to power trip and call me into his office and ask why I was working so much. I explained the administrative oversight a few years prior, shipping delays, cheaper equipment, extra required work, and his delaying of a working image. I tell him, look, I came in day after day after day asking for that rebuilt image. Each time I said day, I'm poking my finger straight down on the edge of his desk, enough that it makes a sound to emphasize that those delays hurt the work I was doing. He wanted to find some personal failing that he could pull out some form of disciplinary action around. I gave him none. Eventually, he ran out of ideas and I left his office, not thinking much of it. Gus, however, was a jerk of the highest order. He would follow our IT director like a puppy. He joined a band with my IT director, so my work situation was not exactly fair. The semester began, and not a single issue in all of the classrooms was reported. I was proud of my work I was able to complete, given the challenges. The second day of the semester, my IT director calls me to his office. There, Gus is sitting beside him, and they both want to talk to me. I don't like the looks of this. My IT director starts asking me about why I was working so much. I explained to him, as I did Gus, the various factors that made this summer's work extra challenging. This destroyed any valid criticism they could muster. Gus goes on to say that he innocently inquired about my work and that I became violent, talking about the gesture I made on his desk, illustrating his failure to do his work in a timely manner. I demonstrate exactly what I did on the IT director's desk to show how ridiculous this claim was. My IT director wanted to exert his authority, and they would not stop until they had something to discipline me with. Nothing I would say would change the result. I was to be in trouble for whatever transgression they imagined up in this meeting. I make sure to point out how long it took Gus to do the small task that I depended on, knowing I could have completed it in about an hour. He was incompetent. My IT director then alludes to the fact that I should respect Gus more, as he is my supervisor. Forget it, I think to myself. I then tell my director, "It is as if Justin Bieber was trying to teach you about music theory. It's only going to upset you." This sudden, sharp, and in my opinion, hilarious comparison was too funny. Both Gus and my IT director immediately laughed, even though Gus was subject of this insult. Once they had stopped laughing, my IT director put on a more serious tone. He says that I could manage my time better, despite the unique circumstances of this summer's work. His voice gets really soft and slow while he's talking to me now. This is a trick he forgot he told me that he uses in arguments to make the other person seem like they're out of control. It's condescending, as if spoken to as a child, and now he's using it on me. He tells me that he wants me to take some time management class, also to take a couple days off and think about it. I just want you to think about it. However, he's going to need my keys and badge. Cue malicious compliance. At this point, he has provided me enough evidence that this is not a job I want to stay at. The absurdity of working so hard and for 28 days straight on salary with no extra pay and to be rewarded with a disciplinary action was too much. That in that moment I had thought about it. Without saying anything, I hand over my badge. I took all the many keys off of my keyring and set them on his desk. I have thought about it. I tell him in the exact same soft and condescending tone he used with me. And you can keep the keys and badge, I told him with the biggest wry smile on my face. I then walk to my office. He follows me, and I notice his eyes become glassy, as if he was hurt by the situation unfolding before him. He expected me to capitulate and accept his punishment for a job well done. He kept saying, "I just want you to think about it," with each time becoming increasingly desperate, and I kept repeating, "I have thought about it." He disappears back to his office with his little minion, Gus, to discuss damage control. I quickly pen an email to all my other coworkers letting them know I was leaving and that I enjoyed working with them. I had to work quick as I knew they would shut down all my accounts very quickly. I packed up my personal effects and left. Gus and my IT director offered to help me, trying to walk back the situation with some small gesture of goodwill, but I was gone. I had been there for 5 years, but I was willing to walk away the moment he tried to treat me so poorly. I found out a little later that the week before I left, a programmer we hired left after he treated her poorly too. I was not aware of the reason she left when she did, but our office manager shared that she quit abruptly like me, without anything lined up given his behavior. About a year later, I hear from the office manager that the IT director had left. Rumor is he was primarily working for another company while in his office at the college, effectively double dipping or making money for 2 jobs while only doing one. He had been caught doing so and was warned by the administration to stop. He opted to leave instead of owning up to his own dubious behavior. My only regret is that I didn't leave that job sooner. Am I the jerk for saying I wouldn't be playing mom with my ex's affair baby? My ex-husband and I divorced 4 years ago because he cheated. He had an affair baby, Juniper, who's 3, with the other woman, but Juniper's mom ended up passing. Aside from my ex-husband and his family, she doesn't have anyone else because her mom grew up in the system. He and I have 4 kids, Joshua, who's 20, Cassidy, who's 16, Nate, who's 11, and Jacob, who's 8. When we divorced, Joshua cut him off, and Cassidy followed him soon after. They don't visit him anymore, and they've never met Juniper. He has always blamed me for that because I kept his kids away. He might be an awful husband and partner, but he's an awesome dad, I'll give him that much. Nate and Jacob still visit him, and they're close with the baby. I tried once to take the 3 of them out when she was younger, but it wasn't for me. I know she's blameless, but I can't separate her from my ex's betrayal. So now, every time I pick Nate and Jacob up, I try not to engage much. If she says hi, I say hi back. If she waves, I do too, but nothing more. Now, every time I pick them up, she starts to mumble, "Mama, Mama." I'll tell her things like, "No, Juniper, I'm not your mom. Call me by my name. I'm fine with that." Last time, she actually ran at me, calling me Mama, and began to cry when I didn't pick her up and take her with me. Listen, I don't think my ex is telling her to call me Mom, but that's how Nate and Jacob act, especially Jacob. He runs at me saying, "Mom, Mom," and hugs me. So I guess she's copying his behavior. Yesterday, my son spent Easter with my ex's family, and Juniper ran at me again. I said hi, and my ex asked for a second, which I said yes. He basically told me that seeing me picking the boys up, being affectionate and loving with them, is confusing and hurting Juniper. She's a baby, and she doesn't understand what's happening. So he asked me if I could just take her with me for a few days like I do with the boys, and maybe, over the time, let her call me Mom. I said absolutely no, that I'm sorry for Juniper, but that I won't be playing mom with her, and that I'm only keeping a relationship with both of them because of our sons. He called me heartless and pointed out how she cries when I leave without her, but I said that it wasn't my problem and that he should deal with that. He later sent a video of Juniper crying by the door and said, "I hope you're happy." So, am I the jerk? I mean, I know it's not her fault, but it isn't mine either. It's a shame you can't divorce him twice. That's called a restraining order. Not the jerk. I'm so sorry that the baby is hurting. She's of the age where I'm sure she's trying to figure out her own little world. Part of that is copying her big brothers, and I commend you for shutting her down kindly. But your ex is a piece of work. He cannot ask you to support him, and he definitely cannot ask you to take the kid off his hands. He had a supportive parenting partner, and he threw it all away when he cheated on you. Exactly. He needs to tell Juniper about her mommy and differentiate that her brothers have a different mommy. Juniper is innocent in all of this, but OP is not obligated to parent her as she is not her mom or stepmom. I can't believe the ex is trying to guilt trip her with a video of Juniper crying. Such manipulative behavior. He messed up by having an affair and one that resulted in having a kid. He needs to parent Juniper and not force his ex to play mom because Juniper's mom has passed. Noisy neighbor destroying packages. I have lived in the unit I'm in for about 2 years. My upstairs neighbor has always been extremely noisy, and when I say extremely, I mean that I cannot sleep because there are very loud stomps, screams, dog running noises, hammering, cutting, and God knows what else. I've made several complaints to the administration, and after months of zero results and my health and job performance starting to be affected, I contacted the unit owner directly. The noises ceased for the most part, at least at night when I sleep. According to the administration, this neighbor is supposed to take meds and often doesn't, which triggers strange behaviors and is the reason why he has a service dog, which I have multiple times seen being mistreated and yelled at by him. He also is known to the police and has gone to court for crimes. One day, doing who knows what in his unit, he did something that caused a leak so bad that it ruined my bathroom ceiling, my kitchen, and my bathroom fan. It also leaked to the unit below me. That's how much water there was. I've been trying to coordinate with the owner of the unit to have that fixed, but that is also taking time. Because I've been communicating with the owner to have him stop making noises and stop doing things that cause massive leaks, I believe this neighbor started to dislike me, much like he does everyone else in the building. He's threatened people, yelled at, and mistreated some of them as well. The suspicion that he doesn't like me became a concrete fact after another neighbor pulled me one day to tell me something. I had ordered something online a few days prior, and the package arrived completely smashed. I spoke to the company that sent it, and they sent me a new one. I thought it had just been an accident, but what the neighbor told me is that he saw my upstairs neighbor stomping on it. He saw it with his own eyes. This situation is starting to get out of control, and I don't know exactly how to proceed. Should I speak to his owner? To the administration? The police? File a lawsuit? Any advice is welcome. Thanks in advance. File a complaint with the police. Damaging mail is illegal. Also, contact an attorney to find out what your options are. So sorry, that sounds very scary. Do not approach this person. Document everything. If you can get a door camera, that would be a good idea. As for your useless landlord, when you have water damage, they legally have to fix it. Call your local Department of Housing Code Enforcement. You can look it up online and file a complaint. They will come to your apartment and do an inspection. Then your landlord will have a certain amount of time to fix it before they will be given fines. Am I the jerk for revoking my mother-in-law's access to my twins after she only took one of them to the seamstress instead of both? I'm 35, female. My husband is 30, male, and we've been married for 5 years. I have 15-year-old twins, Anne and Rachel, from a previous relationship. Their father is very much still involved, but they also love my husband dearly. Aside from some minor stuff, like Anne being thinner than Rach having darker freckles and a long scar on her leg, They look exactly the same. When we got married, my twins were very much well accepted into my husband's family. He can't have kids of his own, so his parents were very much pleased with 2 girls in the family. At the beginning, she treated them just the same, but as they're growing up, my mother-in-law grew closer to Anne. I've always suspected that it has something to do with Rachel's weight. Mother-in-law is pretty skinny too. My mother-in-law and ex-mother-in-law were pretty excited to plan their Sweet 16 because that was the only thing Anne talks about. I could see Rach less excited than her. She thought that she would be tossed aside because Anne is more girly, while Rach likes darker stuff, but that wasn't the case. My ex-mother-in-law went above and beyond to have both of them included, and they chose a My Melody and Kuromi theme so it'll match. My mother-in-law was talking about how beautiful their dresses would be, how she'll ask her daughter-in-law to be their MA and such. My ex offered to pay for all of that, but my mother-in-law said no. The party isn't until November, but yesterday my mother-in-law went out and took Anne with her. She was supposed to help her with some stuff, but my mother-in-law surprised her and took Anne to a seamstress, one of mother-in-law's friends, so her dress would be custom. My girl came home so excited and happy, but I saw Rachel on the verge of tears. I asked both of them to go to their rooms. I could see my husband begging me not to, but I asked her why did she only take Anne and not both? She tried to act stupid because she went from, I thought their father was going to buy her dress, to, I planned on taking them separately. I called it BS, and she said it was not her responsibility to pay for both of them. And I said, sure, but you don't get to play favorites. I said she was uninvited from the party, and I'll be paying all of her money back. She wasn't allowed to be with them anymore until I said so, and that, at least, she should apologize to Rachel. My husband took my side, and my mother-in-law left my house crying. After she left, I called Anne down and told her that my mother-in-law won't be coming to the party and that her custom dress was canceled. I explained to her why, and she understood just fine. She even said sorry to Rach. My father-in-law called us and said that I was so wrong because they're 2 different girls and shouldn't be treated like one. He tried to berate me, but I just hung up. Am I the jerk for that? I know they're different, but is it wrong that I don't want my mother-in-law to exclude Rachel? Not the jerk, and thank you for sticking up for your daughter. Rachel is going to remember this. Your father-in-law is right. They are 2 separate girls and shouldn't be treated as one. But that doesn't mean one gets a custom dress and the other doesn't. If mother-in-law meant to treat them equally, get them both custom dresses, she would have spoken to you about getting them both to the dressmaker on the same day. Separately would have been even preferable, so they could have both had the experience of getting fitted as a surprise. But she didn't do that. She planned on leaving one kid out, which is not even remotely fair. Now, if this is a first-time offense, I might advise not being so harsh, but that's up to you, and you're not the jerk. Right? If money was an issue, she could have talked to the parents about splitting the costs, so both girls could get custom dresses. If that didn't work, then find a different thing to do that is inclusive and in her budget. Instead, she played favorites, hurt the feelings of her other granddaughter, and damaged her relationship with both. OP was absolutely in the right. It's incredibly rude to pick one grandkid over the other. It's so cool that the chosen sister got how crappy that behavior was and moved to make it right with her sister. Parents are guiding these girls right. Also, way to go husband, backing up his wife. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people get treated like crap by their in-laws and the spouse doesn't do anything to stand up to their parents. This guy gets it. Seriously, these parents are rock stars. You're the jerk. You spoiled everyone's day and possibly week or months to throw a tantrum and ban mother-in-law from your grandkids in the party. There's plenty of time before November to buy a second custom dress. I can think of several ways it could have been handled tactfully, and Rachel could have been taken to the dressmaker the next day. You could have just said, thank you, when mother-in-law said she was going to take the girls separately and then work out who pays. You're the jerk. People do bond differently with different kids because some personality combinations gel more than others. Yet, you immediately assume it's about the weight because you're superficial. Everyone doesn't have to be treated the same, just like your kids might have a favorite grandma or aunt. As long as mother-in-law is not being mean to Rachel, you need to back off and stop trying to control and rule over everyone like a dragon. You have no idea if she was going to get Rachel a fitting later. You could have explained you thought it was unfair. Everything doesn't have to be met with anger and banning people. Try discussion and understanding. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or mother-in-law? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my son's teacher to buzz off when she tried to force me to invite 24 kids to his birthday party? I got a call from my son's teacher today. He's 6. Let's say her name is Miss Goldbaum. She says, "Hi, are you Al?" Fake name, father? I say yes and ask if everything is okay. She tells me that she understands he's having a birthday party and that he invited a few of his friends from class, but not everyone. I said yeah, there are a few kids in there that he has problems with, and also I don't think we can really handle hosting 24 kids and their parents. She then tells me that there's a rule that if any kids in the class are invited, that all kids in the class are invited. I told her it's an event off school hours on private property in my home. She can no more tell me what I do there and who I can and can't invite anymore than I can decide who is invited to her Thanksgiving dinner. She then tells me that there's a good reason for this rule, since kids get their feelings hurt if they get left out. So then I pointed out to her that there are 24 kids in the class. If their parents attend the party with them, then that'll be an upwards of 72 people, and I told her that's just not a reasonable thing to ask. I also point out that he has friends from other classes attending, so do I have to invite that whole other class too? She then said, "Al is in my class. He is under my supervision. This is my rule." I then tell her that Al is only under her supervision while he's in class. I'm the one throwing the party, and she doesn't get to make rules for my house or me. She then said if it involves her class, she does. After a bit of back and forth on this, I lost my cool. I said, "Lady, it's pretty clear that you're used to bossing around kids who have to listen to you, and that you don't seem to understand that your little fiefdom ends at the end of the school day and doesn't go further than schoolhouse gates. I'm not a 6-year-old in your class. I'm a 38-year-old union electrician planning a private event in my own home, off school hours. If you think you're the one to make the rules for me, in my home on which I pay the mortgage on, you can go forget yourself, and there isn't a darn thing you can do about it." She then kind of stammered, and I ended the call. My wife agrees that the school has no business telling us who we can and can't invite into our home and that they don't make rules for our house. However, she says I went too far in telling Miss Goldbaum to go forget herself. I am very comfortable with telling her that she has no right to tell us who we can and can't invite into our home and that it's crazy I might have to invite up to 72 people for my son to have any friends from his class to attend. But in truth, I do kind of wish I left that last "go forget yourself" part off. But my friends at work and a few other parents tell me someone needed to take her down a peg since she was acting like this and she deserved a lesson about overstepping. So, am I the jerk? Edit. To address a few common questions or things people bring up. First, we invited roughly 9 out of the 24 kids in his class. 1 or 2 may be from other classes. I'm a little embarrassed to say I'm not totally sure because I feel like I should be, but that's what it is. Secondly, most of the invites were done by my wife directly by texting the other kids' families. There were a few kids where my son wanted to invite them, but I didn't have their family's contact info. So we gave him a few sealed envelopes with notes inside saying we understand the boys are friends and that we're having an event for his birthday, and even aside from that, we'd like to set up play dates. From there, the family contacts us, and then myself and my wife do the invites after we chat with the family for a bit. My son himself doesn't do the invites. He's a 6-year-old. We do the invites through the parents. Not the jerk. And I think you need to escalate this. The only way you'd have been out of line would be if you let him hand out invitations during class time. Ask for a meeting between the school administrator and this teacher. At the beginning of the meeting, apologize for losing your temper and your language, but then go on to politely explain what happened during the phone call and ask the administrator if this is school policy. I'm guessing it's not, and this teacher is way out of line with this request. Administration probably needs to know what she's up to so she doesn't keep trying it with other parents. Chances are she's got a history of crap like this based on her self-righteous attitude. Not the jerk. You declined her request, which was your right to do. Instead of accepting that, she argued with you. She had the opportunity to end the discussion politely, but she chose to keep pursuing it and tried to force the issue. Some people won't take no for an answer until you get more forceful with it. That's on her. That said, it's fairly common for teachers to have this sort of rule in their classrooms. Invitations often cannot be passed out in class unless they're going out to everyone. If invitations are being passed out selectively, they should be sent outside of school hours to prevent arguments and hurt feelings. The teacher does have the authority to prevent students from passing out invitations or to set rules on how they're being passed out inside her own classroom. This isn't a new thing. I'm in my 40s and remember having to invite friends to my birthday parties after school because we couldn't pass them out in class unless we were inviting everyone. Like you, my mom had zero interest in having 50+ people in her house. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the teacher? Please let us know. Sometimes you gotta get a little feisty with people. Am I the jerk for telling my husband to stop inviting his mom to our daughter's performances? Situation is pretty frustrating to say the least, but let's start with some context. So my husband and I have a 13-year-old daughter. She plays piano and has participated in several plays in and outside of school. Now here's the thing. My husband invites his mom to every performance our daughter has. Not saying he shouldn't, but many times she'd put my daughter down and point out where she messed up and what she needed to work on. Hello, she's not even an expert on this. This happens every time. My daughter's picked up on these negative comments and her self-esteem keeps getting lowered, and by extension, her performance keeps getting lower as well. I told my husband his mom needs to either stop putting our daughter down or stop coming to her plays. He said his mom is the grandmother and should be included in these events as support. Our daughter had a performance this past Wednesday. I told my husband that his mom can sit this one out, but he said it was too late because he sent her a link to the date and location of the event. I sighed and said nothing. His mom arrived like 20 minutes later, sat next to him, and kept pulling him close while whispering in his ear. I just rolled my eyes hard. Once the play was over, and after we got a chance to see our daughter, who looked nervous and shaking, mother-in-law looked at her and said, "Let me just say that today's performance was disappointing." My daughter was in shock, and I was floored completely. My daughter started crying, then rushed away. Mother-in-law then casually said, "Oh, I have to go now. I have an appointment with the salon for Chloe's," her other granddaughter's, birthday party. I was fuming. I told her what she said to my daughter was not okay and that she made her upset. She said something along the line of, "Just telling it how it is," then left. We went home and I lost it on my husband, telling him his mom just keeps putting our daughter down and it's not right. He said I'm being overdramatic and what his mom is doing is just constructive criticism. I told him from now on he needs to stop inviting her to our daughter's performances. He said I was being ridiculous and that I shouldn't expect his mom to be excluded from her granddaughter's life like that. We had a big argument and now my daughter isn't even interested in playing anymore. My husband said I was way out of line and shouldn't use our daughter in a fight with his mom. He also called me controlling and vicious. Am I the jerk? ETA, since this took off and people are asking more questions, I'd like to add some context in bullet point form. 1. My mother-in-law and I don't talk due to past disagreements. 2. Mother-in-law is uncomfortable with the concept of playing piano and thinks that my daughter is wasting time and getting distracted with zero benefits since she and my husband want her to become a doctor. My daughter doesn't want to be a doctor, but that's an argument for another time. 3. My mother-in-law thinks I'm wasting my husband's money because I enrolled my daughter in piano classes, have been since she was 9. 4. My husband told me he'll keep inviting his mom over and over again until I learn to stop using our daughter as a tool to fight his mom with. Believe me, I'm not. Remove your husband from receiving the information on your daughter's activities. He is the same as his mother. He doesn't see anything wrong because that's how he was raised, and I'm willing to bet her other granddaughter she was going to see is the daughter of your husband's golden child sibling. Next time your husband does anything, put a dish in the sink, go into the bathroom, goes out of the car, tell him each time he's doing it wrong and a disappointment. But honestly, I would refuse to be in a marriage where my husband thinks nothing of how his daughter is treated. I would not want my daughter to be around that, and at 13, your kid is able to voice who she wants to be around. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. I would really consider a divorce from this man. He clearly is a bad husband and an even worse father. Do whatever you can to get away from both of them, because it isn't going to get any better. Am I the jerk for expecting my sister to reimburse me for my son's suit? I, 38 male, am a father to 2 boys, Andrew, who's 14, and Marshall, who's 12. Yesterday, my parents held an Easter gathering at their house. Me, my parents, and my 4 siblings and their kids were all invited. Marshall told me that he was planning on wearing what he wore to church to my parents' place, a suit and tie. My wife and I reminded Marshall that everyone was going to be dressed more casually, but he said he didn't care. I wasn't too surprised because Marshall has always been kind of a sharp dresser. All of my siblings and their kids were there when we arrived, including my sister Sarah, who's 44, who I never really got along with. Her twins, who are both 16, and daughter, who's 14, were also there. Sarah spoils her kids rotten, and they've always been super bratty because of that. Every family gathering, they're always pretty rude to their cousins, and they always act super entitled. Unsurprisingly, Sarah's kids were relentlessly picking on Marshall for choosing to wear a suit when almost everyone else was dressed more casually. I could tell it really bothered Marshall, but he did his best to not let it get to his head. He did his best to ignore them, and he just hung out with Andrew and his cousins that he gets along with. At around 4:30, we all gathered for dinner outside. Sarah's kids kept picking on all of their cousins the whole time, but especially Marshall, because of his choice to wear a suit. Again, he did his best to ignore them, but I still felt really bad. For dessert, my mom made strawberry and chocolate milkshakes for everyone in 2 large blenders that she had. When everyone there was done, there was still about a half blender of chocolate milkshake and a quarter blender of strawberry. Sarah's kids decided it would be funny to dump them on Marshall and ruin his suit, so that's exactly what they did. Poor Marshall was super embarrassed afterwards and ran away crying. My wife went to go chase him and calm him down. I had enough at that point, so I grabbed Andrew and left. I sent Sarah the dry cleaning bill and told her that I'm expecting her to pay it, and that if the dry cleaners can't fix Marshall's suit, then she will have to reimburse me for the suit, along with the dress shirt and tie as well, because she acted like it was no big deal that her kids decided to bully Marshall for no reason. She then told me that she doesn't think she should have to reimburse me and that I'm a terrible father for having my son wear a suit to a casual gathering. I blew up at her, telling her that she has no business in saying how my son should dress and that she needs to learn how to discipline her bratty kids and that she needs to stop spoiling them. I do feel that may have been uncalled for. My parents and all of my other siblings are on my side, believing that Sarah should reimburse me, but they do believe that I should have had Marshall dress more casually. I disagree though, because there's nothing wrong with Marshall wanting to look his best. Am I the jerk? Edit. I'm not going to leave any more comments for now, but thank you all for commenting. I saw a lot of comments saying how I should have directly intervened more and prevented the bullying, which I failed to do so. So my wife and I apologize to Marshall for that. I'm also going to teach Andrew and Marshall how to defend themselves if something like this happens again, as well as stand up for them more. I have also told my parents and all of my other siblings that I will not be attending any more family gatherings if Sarah and her kids are invited. That is, until she pays for the suit and her kids' behaviors improve. I'm also probably going to go no contact with her for a while. Not the jerk. Marshall wasn't dressed inappropriately. It was a family party on a major holiday, not a hike through the Grand Canyon. His cousins ruined his clothes on purpose. It wasn't an accident. They wanted to embarrass him and mess up his clothes. Their parents absolutely should pay to fix the problem, and if they were decent parents, they would make their kids earn back every cent. My neighbor called the cops on my dad and really ended up regretting it. We live in a really quiet neighborhood. The road was never marked, so we used to park on both sides with one lane for cars to pass through. Our relationship with our neighbor was good up until now. He used to come in our yard to ask my father to teach him how to garden. When he goes on vacation, he tells us we can park in his land, which we never did because we have enough room for our cars, but that was nice of him. Until one day, he had a friend come over with a really large truck to help him work on his garden, and my father's car was parked in front of our house. The truck could not pass because there was our neighbor's car on the left and ours on the right. The neighbor didn't want to move his car, saying it was on his property, in front of his house on the public paved driveway, and he called us home to move my father's. No one was home except for my 13-year-old brother. He called my father to tell him about the situation, and my father told the neighbor to move his own car as he wasn't home. The neighbor refused and called the cops. They showed up and he explained. The cops were annoyed that they had to show up for this, and they took my father's keys to move his car out of the truck's way. My family was upset, but I was enraged because in my country, it's quite a big deal to call the cops on someone. So I took it upon myself to make it right. I started parking on his side of the road, and he came to me many times to tell me that it's his property. But as it was paved by the state and had plots put there by the city officials, I didn't believe him, and I told him to bring me proof that this was his land. He had a survey and came to me one day to show me that this was indeed his property. I said okay and didn't park on his side anymore. However, I called the mayor's office to tell them that I would like the city to pay for plots in front of my house and pave the driveway too, as they did for my neighbor. Turns out, my neighbor had a friend working at the mayor's office and unofficially paved his driveway and put plots in front of his house, not his property, to stop people from parking on his side of the road. It was deemed illegal, and a few days later, the mayor's office sent a guy to take off the plots, and the neighborhood had 2 more public parking spaces. It was petty, but it was worth it. If he had just moved his car, none of this would have happened. No need to say we no longer have a friendly relationship with him, and he's not welcome here anymore. My dad demands my salary. This is a true story. It's about my father. I might sound like a bad person talking about my own parents this way, But it's true, I'm no angel, and I've had a rough life. P.S. If you see me talking about money, it's in Indian rupees. $1 equals 80 Indian rupees. To be honest, I had a rough childhood. The relationship between me and my father was really bad. I'm the second child, and I have an older sister. Apparently, my dad wanted another daughter. Hence, he started avoiding me from the day I was born. Like, he didn't even show up at the hospital that day, so my mom had to go to the hospital alone to give birth to me and come back home with me, the new baby. He avoided me so much that whenever my family would go shopping, everyone would get something with them. A cloth, toffee, or anything they wanted. I, on the other hand, would not have anything. If I asked for something, he would throw a huge tantrum. Let me come clean here. After a few years, after I turned 8 or 9, I did start arguing back. I started to push him to the extremes to make him feel what I felt like. But he would handle it all the same way, yell at me and mistreat me. Even until this day, I have social anxiety disorder because of the experiences I've had. Not only that, he loved throwing away my stuff. When I was young, I had a hobby of collecting things. My oldest memory is of me collecting shells from the beach. He would throw everything away, saying that it was worthless. I started collecting stamps, and he used all of them to send letters to his friends. I started collecting coins, and he threw them all in the toilet. I collected fossils. Not lying, I had fossils. He waited until I filled a full bucket of amber and other kinds of fossils and sent a verification to the archaeologist department to verify it. They verified it and said that they are original and could get me thousands if I sell them. I didn't want to sell and wanted to collect more. Days later, he took all of it and threw it away because, and I quote, "carrying bones inside the house would bring demons inside." I gave up fighting him at that point. I was around 13 to 15 at the time. I thought that if I could bear a few more years, I could get my own life, with my own rules. When the time came for me to go to college, he wouldn't let me choose my favorite course. I was forced to choose IT, not regretting that, but it wasn't my thing. I just agreed and lived in the hostel. He went abroad for work after that. I thought I could live my life after that, but he doesn't let go of me that easily. He gave his number to like everyone in my college, my classmates, roommates, professor, etc., and he'd investigate me every day. If I don't respond the way he liked, he'd send my sister, family favorite, to get my mobile phone and make me realize what it's like to be lonely. After 4 hard years and 1 year of training, I got a nice job in an MCN that I've always looked up to. In January of this year, I got my first salary. I wanted to have a lot of fun with it, like having good food in a nice restaurant with my friends, going out on a hiking trip, etc. That's when he shows up again, after all these years, giving me everything I wanted. He'd have my food on the plate before I got to the table. The water heater would be on hours before I went to the bathroom for a shower, things like that. My mother, being the kind-hearted angel she is, warns me that he's doing it to get my money and nothing else. And just like she said, a few days later, my dad comes to me and demands that I send him 3,000 rupees. Like I said before, I was still a trainee. My salary was hardly above 5,000, so I straight up refused to pay him that much. He was working abroad, so I was sure he already had millions in his account and just didn't want to spend his own money. Then the blackmailing starts. My grandma, sister, uncles, and everyone in my family insisted on me paying my dad because family comes first. So after a lot of arguments, I decided to take the hard way around. I pay him the 3,000, pack my stuff, and move out. I removed my dad's name from the nominee and insurance list that my company provides. Free healthcare in all major hospitals throughout the world for the employees and 3 family members, which just has my mother's name now. Now I live alone, just a few minutes away from the main headquarters of my company. The story doesn't end there. He called me a few days ago asking me for another 10,000. This time he says no matter how much I get in my salary, I should send him 10,000 every month. If you're living with your expenses, you know that's impossible. To put that into contrast, I make around 25,000 a month. The room I live in costs 14.5 thousand per month in rent. Also, there are internet costs, food, tax, and other essentials that I need to take care of. So I just decide to ignore him a few days. I've made up my mind. I'm not paying him a penny after this. Even if it means that the money would save his life, I won't do it. I've suffered a lot, but that doesn't mean I'm going to help my oppressors and be a good hero. Everyone should own up and pay for what they're worth. So yes, the money is mine. I'm saving the rest of my money, salary minus expenses, up for my future wife, marriage, and kids. A crazy mom screams at me for not helping out in the ER. Hi, I'm a 28-year-old doctor, and my specialty is in clinical chemistry and laboratory medicine, so I usually do not interact with patients much anymore. This happened during my specialization training, and it still makes me shake my head. My colleague and friend in another department suddenly developed seizures in the middle of the night. Her husband contacted me, as I often helped her before they were married, and I was taking a midnight stroll in the campus as I was on call for the lab. I went to emergency and got all her papers ready. My junior from my alma mater was studying emergency medicine, and she helped expedite things. My friend arrived the same time another family involved in an accident arrived. Since my friend was still seizing, my junior asked if I could place an IV for the time being because they needed to look at the family involved in the accident while the neurologist arrived. No problem. The ED was extremely busy, and I was ready to help. I did everything for my friend as one of the nursing officers handed me the anti-epileptic drug, while her husband, also a doctor but in another hospital, stayed by to make sure she was comfortable. That was when entitled mother tapped on my shoulder. Hi, can you help me? Me. Hi, sorry, I'm not an ED doctor, but I can guide you to who you should see. Aren't you a doctor? Me. Yes, but I'm not part of the ED. I'm here for my friend. So, since you helped your friend, can you take a look at my kid? Me. I'm so sorry, but I cannot. I cannot take responsibility as I'm not part of the emergency team, and neither am I posted here. When my friend in the ED gets better, I shall ask her to take a look. But you helped your friend? Me. Yes, because the team is busy with an accident, and since it's my friend, all I did was set an IV so that she'll be stable till they can come back and check on her. So, why can't you help me? I'm tired of waiting, and my kid is uncomfortable. Me, tired now. Lady, I'm not an emergency doctor, nor am I on duty. I cannot help you or take responsibility should something happen. Please wait for the emergency doctor to be free. Why don't you go to the registration counter? They will ensure someone looks after you. I cannot leave my kid alone. Why can't you take a look at him? Me, sighing. Where is your kid now and what is wrong? I cannot give any advice or do anything because I'm not part of the posted emergency team, but I can inform them. I need you to look at him. He fell down and he's crying. Me, just wait. Once an emergency doctor comes, I will send them your way. Now she's grabbing my arm. You will see him now. Friend's hubby, pulling me away and blocking her. You will leave her alone. She's not part of the emergency team. Stop harassing her. Karen. Help! Help! They are assaulting me. A charge nurse finally ran in asking what was wrong. I knew her as we were part of the same prayer group, so she asked my side first. I explained about my friend and how entitled mom was forcing me to help her son when I can't. Charge nurse. OP is a doctor, but she's not posted nor a part of our emergency team. We needed her to help her friend because we're super busy, but that's it. She can't help you. Karen. Stop giving excuses. You just don't want to help me. You? Me. Now, help me with my son or I will complain. Me, now annoyed. Go ahead. I turned away as Karen was dealing with the charge nurse as the neurologist had arrived and I had to talk with her and friend's hubby. I thought that was it. Wrong. As my friend got better and I was helping another charge nurse with the IV bag while she gave my friend another dose of anti-epileptic drug, my hand was suddenly pulled, nearly causing me to pull out the IV. Karen had grabbed me. Me, now really angry. What on earth? You again? What are you doing? You nearly made me rip off this IV. Karen. This is the doctor who refused to help me. I want her license canceled. Turns out she had dragged the emergency medical officer, the senior doctor watching over everything, to complain. The officer blinked as she knew I did not work in the ER unless I was posted there, which I was not. Officer. She does not work here. Karen. Yes, she does. She was fixing that woman's IV. Officer. She's part of the hospital, but she does not work in the ED. Since she is a doctor, she was just helping her friend, but that's it. She can't look after your kid unless I tell her to. Stop lying. Why are you covering for her? She is the worst. Friend's hubby. Officer, take this lady away. My wife is not well, and she's been harassing OP too much. OP is already going out of her way to be polite. Officer agreed and turned to Karen. Officer, I saw your kid. He's fine. We are swamped today, especially since we had an entire family be admitted here. If you continue to create ruckus, we will ask you to leave and maybe even ban you. Karen, but I did nothing wrong. It's her fault. Officer, firmly. You have two options. You either leave them alone or you leave. Karen left us as she grumbled, and I heaved a sigh of relief. My friend had recovered, so we decided to have her discharged and have her checked up on in the morning. As we were leaving, we saw Karen glare at us and mouth words at us, but we ignored her. Friend's hubby apologized, but I told him not to worry, as none of it was his fault. Next morning, the story had spread in the whole hospital, and my guide told me to be firm and not entertain people who were like Karen. It's not very exciting, but it's not the first time I went through this. Since I have friends in the ED, I often go to see them and be treated so badly by patients and their relatives. Some days I'm glad I'm in the laboratory medicine and not in the emergency department. Sorry for the long post, but I was talking to my friend and we spoke about this incident and I thought to share it. Grocery store nonsense. This happened a few years back. I worked for a large grocery chain for 12 years. In that time, I worked all holidays, came in early, stayed late, rarely called out sick, and came in on my days off. I was treated like crap near the tail end of my time there when we had gotten a new co-manager at the store. He acted like I wasn't a team player. He stalked my Facebook if I called out sick, trying to catch me in a lie, since he was used to me coming in and working when I was sick most of the time, which I know is completely terrible in and of itself. In those rare occasions that I would call out, he tried to require me to have a doctor's note to excuse the one day I would miss. All while this is happening, people would come in late, be no-call, no-shows, and be out sick for weeks with management knowing full well that these people would be on vacation. All this with zero disciplinary action. Cue malicious compliance number 1. The store started cracking down hard on overtime, so they were used to me coming in early and staying late to make sure all tasks were completed with no complaints from management, since it meant that it freed up other people, themselves included, from having to do the work. My department, which was just me, was constantly praised by corporate as being the best looking and cared for department they have seen in the entire Northwest. I took pride in my job and what I did, but this soon became me working just my scheduled hours. It resulted in incorrect orders, a fall behind in keeping the shelf stocked, and a massive amount of overstock adding up in the back room. People that were clueless as to what we had in the back room were tasked with fulfilling my orders and ordering things they thought we needed, but did not. It quickly became a crap show. They started letting me come in whenever I wanted and staying as long as necessary after about a month of fall behind. Cue malicious compliance number 2. I was really tired of being treated so poorly for the amount of time and effort I put into making my department perfect. I applied at a company that my friend had been trying to get me to come to for at least 5 years. Wasn't expecting to get the job, as I had very little experience in that company, since most of my working career was at a grocery store. But I figured, hey, the worst that would happen is I wouldn't get it and still have a full-time job with my current employer. Well, they absolutely loved me and quickly hired me on full-time. I put in a notice at the store that I had accepted a job elsewhere but was willing to stay there part-time to train whomever they hired to take my spot. 5 months go by and they hadn't even posted my position. They did nothing to fill my place. I ended up putting my 2-week notice in as I was so burned out working 60+ hours a week with my 2 jobs with no scheduled days off between the 2. I made sure that I was available to the grocery store for a huge holiday and my last day would be the day after. This lovely co-manager, mentioned earlier, thought he was hurting me by not scheduling me for the last week of my notice, which this holiday fell in. Other management tried to backtrack this and try to get me to come in anyway. But alas, the schedule had been posted, and as per union guidelines, they could not change your schedule once posted without consent from the employee. I shrugged at the co-manager and said, "Sorry, I wasn't on the schedule, so I made plans with my family since I hadn't had this holiday off for years." The rest of management was furious at this guy for trying to pull this power move, which blew up in his face. I cashed out my banked vacation time before leaving, which only capped out at 3 weeks' pay, but still, it was my final forget you. I hear from old friends and colleagues that this co-manager was demoted to a clerk in a small department. I work now for a far superior company who values their employees and compensates hard work. I had taken a huge pay cut when I took on this new position, but within 3 years, I was making more than I had been making in 12 years at the grocery store. Biannual bonuses, paid vacation, a massive amount of paid sick and vacation time, and a considerable amount of less stress. I almost got a Karen arrested. So, I worked at Panda Express my senior year and didn't turn 18 until a few months after graduating high school. but my parents allowed me more freedom than most in my circumstance. However, I have a lot of fun stories from this time frame, but this was my absolute favorite. There was a Target next to where I worked, and I often stopped by to pick up snacks or sodas before work. Because my work shirt was red, I often got mistaken for a Target employee, but nothing like this. One particular summer day, I went to Target while on break to buy a new water bottle, as I had accidentally broken mine during my shift and wanted to get it replaced. Corporate was really stingy and deducted money from our checks if we used the cups at work. And it was hot outside, so it was better to get a cheap replacement and a snack while on break. While I was wandering the store with plenty of time to spare, I noticed someone was following me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but after the fifth detour aisle, I realized she was following me. Being only 17, I was actually a bit nervous and finally mustered up the courage to face her. Me. Can I help you with something? Karen. It's about time. I've been trying to get your attention for forever now. I often wore headphones as I had severe social anxiety and didn't like being in public areas that were crowded like this. Me. Well, can I help you? Karen. Is that how you treat your customers? Talk about poor customer service. I was genuinely confused until I realized that she, like so many people before her, had confused me for a Target worker, despite the fact that I had a giant panda on the back of my shirt along with the company name. These types of encounters were normally pretty easy, but this lady wasn't having it. Me. Ma'am, I don't work here. Karen. Don't go lying to me like that. How dumb do you think I am? At this point, we had attracted the attention of a few employees who called for their supervisor, S. As I tried to reason with this lady, the supervisor showed up and took over the conversation. Supervisor. Is there a problem here? Karen. This employee is walking around and ignoring customers. She was extremely rude to me, and I want her fired. Supervisor looks at me and sees the Panda Express logo on my shirt. Ma'am, she doesn't work here. Karen. Are you calling me stupid? At this point, she starts towards me, and I backed away, trying to hide behind the supervisor while struggling to understand what her problem was. She reached around the supervisor and grabbed a fistful of my shirt before either of us were able to react. She tugged so hard at my shirt that it almost slipped over my head, and I started crying at this point. Karen. See? She's wearing a red shirt, so she must be an employee here. I want her fired. Me. Let go of me, please. Thankfully, one of my mom's friends happened to be shopping that day with her kids and saw this lady holding me by the shirt. She immediately walked up to the lady with her kids, one of whom was my age, in tow, and proceeded to grab Karen by her arm. My mom's friend. What on earth do you think you're doing? Get your hands off her now. Karen pauses for a moment and looks from me to the woman and back again. She's not a kid. She's a young adult. Me. Still trying to get free. I'm 17, lady, and for the last time, I don't work here. At this point, you could hear a pin drop from across the room, and I thought Karen was going to just let go and leave me alone. However, she huffed and looked away, commented how being 17 practically made me an adult and was no excuse to act so rudely. My mom's friend, the employees, and the supervisor had enough by this point and were already calling the police, while my friend, who had seen me bullied all throughout high school, attempted to calm me down. My mom's friend wanted to know where my mom was, to which I replied that she was likely at home since I had been working. Then I explained that I had to come to buy a new water bottle after breaking mine. My mom's friend actually paid for my water bottle and told me to go back to work so that I didn't get into trouble, but she also warned me that the police might be coming by to talk to me. I didn't think anything of this and did exactly as she said, knowing that I was never going to hear the end of it from my mom when I got home that night. As my mom's friend warned, the police showed up at work later that day and asked a few questions, and my boss didn't seem to mind, as I explained what happened as soon as I got back. I never heard what happened to Karen, but my mom told me to never let anyone grab me like that again, as they could be arrested for doing that. Am I the jerk for humiliating my husband in front of his coworkers when he implied that I wasn't as beautiful as the boss's wife? My husband recently got a new job at a private practice working for a cosmetic surgeon. He works on the business/financial end of the practice. The boss's wife is genuinely one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. I do struggle with my self-esteem, so I will admit there were times I didn't want to be around her. I know that this is my issue and she has never been unkind to me, so it is something I was willing to work through because my husband is very ambitious and networking is important to him. I've noticed the men he works with talk a lot about the boss's beautiful wife when the boss isn't around, and I think it's kind of gross the way they do this. Recently, we got invited to her 40th birthday, and two of his coworkers were at our house and making a big deal about how they didn't know that she was 40. She doesn't look 40. This was right in front of their wives, one of whom was pregnant. At this point, I just feel bad for the women because all of their wives hate her and talk so much crap about her when she hasn't even done anything, just because these guys are gross. Someone asked my husband if he knew she was 40. My husband said, "I mean, yeah, because she graduated med school and has been practicing for like 10 years. I'm not surprised. But Kim Kardashian is also 40, so it is doable. But she is married to a plastic surgeon. Of course she is going to be the most beautiful woman in the world." I was in shock that he called her the most beautiful woman in the world. Of course I don't actually think I am, but isn't he supposed to think that? I clapped back that she really is gorgeous, and who knows what I would look like if he gave me half the lifestyle her husband gives her. My husband immediately got quiet and tried to laugh it off, but I knew I hurt him. He is very driven by money, and though he makes good money, he compares himself to guys who make more, and his boss is loaded. When they left, he asked me how I could humiliate him like that, and said I let my insecurities get the best of me. Everyone sucks here. You all sound very superficial. This poor woman does nothing but exist, and all of you talk bad about her because of your unhappy marriages. Grown people standing around talking about someone's looks like you're in an episode of some 2000s teen sitcom where the parents are the annoying B plot you want to fast forward through. Everyone sucks here. You think that you're above it because you recognize that she hasn't done anything, but you're happy to use her and her husband as pawns in some petty little back and forth with your husband. Leave them out of your bickering. Everyone sucks here. You honestly both have insecurities to work on. He's not the most successful man in the world, and you're not the most beautiful. This is true for the vast majority of people on Earth, and it's fine. There's no reason to be that upset about it. Am I the jerk for refusing to move countries? My daughter moved to the US from Canada. Both my husband and I are in Canada, and we're working and live here our whole lives. My daughter left to be with her boyfriend, who she married and recently divorced. The father has left for his home country, and it's almost impossible to get him to pay child support now. She's going through a lawyer, but it will likely take years, and he doesn't have a job now, so she probably won't get much from him. Now she's a single mother with 2 kids and childcare costs around $1,400 a month, making her $3,700 a month income not enough to support them. She wants me to move to Texas to look after her sons for her. I don't have any interest in moving to the US and told her to come back to Ontario, and she could move in with us and we can help her with her kids. Ontario also has affordable $10 a day childcare subsidy, though I'm not 100% sure if she would qualify. She refuses because she found a new boyfriend and wants to continue to live with him. I told her I'm not moving down there, and she can move up here. She has dual citizenship, and we can help her or she can stay in Texas. She then tried asking for $1,400 every month to cover her childcare, which I told her I don't have, and she argued since her children are my grandsons, I need to help provide for them. I told her I will let her stay rent-free and help her babysit if she moves back, and she insists I have to move there or pay for her daycare costs because she wants to be with her new boyfriend. I was so annoyed she would stay for a man who she's only known for a few months and told her to ask him for the money since she's staying in Texas for him, and she yelled that I was being heartless. Help me! Okay, here's some help. No, not like that. Help me by completely uprooting your life. Not the jerk. I suspect that your daughter is emotionally distressed at the moment and is not able to hear your side very well. However, her inability to accept your help does not mean that you are a jerk. The daughter sounds delusional. She's an adult. She cannot pay her bills, but doesn't want to be inconvenienced in any way. Instead, she wants the world to bend around her. Who in their right mind demands that their parents uproot their entire lives for the sole purpose of providing free childcare or give them large amounts of money each month? OP has been more than generous by offering to help with the daughter if she moves back, but she's more concerned about her new boyfriend. What happens if OP moves and the daughter finds a new boyfriend that she wants to run off to? Am I the jerk for not telling my parents about my little brother's school play and going myself instead? Ever since my mom decided she was tired of being a stay-at-home mom and got a job last year, along with my dad already working almost the entire day, I, male 24, have been taking care of my little brother, who's 7, most of the day. I buy his clothes, school supplies, food, and cook for him. My parents give me the money, of course. I usually tell my parents about how my brother is doing in school and what happened in the day, but last week I decided to omit that he was going to participate in a school play this yesterday. I didn't tell them because not only could just one relative per kid attend, but my brother also specifically told me he wanted me there. They could have gotten out of work early for it, but I didn't want them there, to be honest. While they didn't even know he had an act coming, I helped him rehearse, learn his lines, and even paid for his costume. I just don't think either of them deserve to be present. My brother takes his sweet time to change when he gets home, so he still had the costume while my mom came home from work. She asked me why he was dressed in a suit. He played a butler, and I told her it was his costume for the school play. She told me she doesn't remember any school play, and I said that I indeed didn't tell her or my dad about it. She got mad and said I have no right to hide stuff from her when it concerns her son, and that I was breaking the agreement we had. I told her she and dad didn't deserve to watch it, sent her the recording of the play I made, and went to my room. Today, they both have been acting cold, and I'm kind of regretting I didn't tell them before, since I'm all the time with my brother and I could have spared a day for my mom and dad and all of that stuff. Not the jerk. They neglected their parental duties and loaded them off onto you. Your brother wanted you there, not your parents, and maybe if they were asking him about his school day instead of you, they would have known about it. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter that she's getting what she deserves? I, 58, male, have 2 daughters. One from a previous marriage and another from my wife's previous marriage. Both daughters are around the same age. Think mid-20s. My daughter Allie has never gotten along with her stepsister Joanna. If Joanna invited Allie to a movie, Allie was suddenly super busy and had no time. If Joanna wanted to come with Allie to a party, Joanna wasn't invited and there was no way she could bring her. She'd rip up Joanna's things and would blame Joanna when she'd be grounded. Just the run-of-the-mill petty teenager BS. Joanna was a good sport and always seemed to take things on the chin. Her explanation was always that sisters fight. Until about maybe 3 or 4 summers ago, Allie was home from college and was going through a rough breakup that was causing her grades to tank, which put her on academic probation. Allie was upset and was taking it out on everyone, especially Joanna. My wife and I told her to cut it out, and she seemed to catch on that her behavior wasn't going to be accepted. Come to find out, after Allie leaves to go back to college, that she had completely destroyed Joanna's scrapbook with pictures of her dad and destroyed a lot of the shirts she had left of his. Joanna didn't make a stink about it in front of us, but that night the house stunk of E6000 and Mod Podge. You could guess what she spent the night doing. After that incident, Joanna had completely given up on Allie. Allie has a birthday coming up. Joanna wouldn't even sign the card. Allie is in town for the weekend. Unless it's a holiday or a family event, Joanna wasn't there. And honestly, we didn't blame her. Now the issue is that Allie wants Joanna to let things go and let bygones be bygones. Joanna is getting married soon, and Allie wants an invite. It was brought up this past week at a family dinner. Joanna and her fiancé, as well as their son, attended. Allie brought up how the kids were the same age and how it would be cool after the wedding if the kids could hang out. Allie has also asked what she should wear to Joanna's wedding and if she'd be a bridesmaid. Joanna pretty much laid it out for Allie that she wasn't coming and that the kids wouldn't be seeing each other outside of family events. The night was pretty tense afterwards, and I asked Joanna if there was any way she would forgive Allie. She said she wanted nothing to do with her, and I told her I fully understand that she carries a lot of hurt from how Allie treated her. Allie came to me after Joanna left and pretty much begged me to convince Joanna to move past things. I told her that had she been a more considerate and kind person back then, that maybe she'd have a chance at a relationship with her stepsister. I told her that she made her bed and she needs to lay in it. She said I'm a jerk and that any good father would want to see his kids reunite. Am I the jerk for telling her she deserves this? My pregnant sister expects me to support her family financially. My sister got pregnant with her boyfriend right out of high school, got married the next year, then proceeded to pop out another baby every year or two, so she now has 4 kids and she's 24 years old. She's a stay-at-home mom, even though she was brilliant and could have gotten a free ride to a great university. Since hers are the only grandkids, our parents fawn over her constantly. They gush over every new tooth or haircut like it's some sort of huge achievement. Problem is, her husband's business wasn't doing great even before lockdown and is barely limping along now. Sister doesn't work, and my parents have limited income. So guess who constantly gets told to lend money to them for crap like school fees, car seats, car payments, new strollers, etc. They don't even ask. My mom just texts me, "Your sister needs money for the kids," and I'm supposed to cough it up. If I complain, they accuse me of being jealous because I don't have a husband and family, even though I'm older. I'm only 26. So over Easter, I notice my sister isn't drinking, and I think, oh no, here we go again. Sure enough, she stands up and announces that she's having yet another precious miracle. Everyone's gushing, and I just try to stay quiet and out of the way. Later, she asks me if everything is all right, and I try to play it off, but she pushes. So I asked her if she and her husband could really afford another baby. Very snippily, she replies, "God will provide like he has so far," which really ticked me off. I yelled that, no, actually, God didn't provide for her babies. I did, and I wasn't going to be giving them any more handouts. It devolved into a huge argument, and everyone shouted at me, and basically, I've been banned from my family unless I apologize. I haven't apologized. It's been radio silence, except for one text from my mom saying that if my sister has issues with her pregnancy, then it's my fault for stressing her out. I asked if my sister was showing any symptoms, but no one will answer me or tell me. I don't know. I don't think I'm the jerk, but I don't want to be the reason that she has pregnancy issues. Not the jerk. And the next time your mom says, "Oh, your sister needs money and you need to give it to them," just say, "No, sister said God will provide, so I'm giving him a turn." That or, "Sorry, I'm banned from the family. Guess it's up to you." A good shiny spine is what's really needed here. If they choose to exclude you from the family for a very reasonable boundary, you will not give any money for any reason now or ever in the future, then it's their loss. Feel free to remind them that you're a family member, not an ATM, and they are the ones who have chosen to exclude. The door is open if they want a relationship, but the financial door will have to stay closed and they can take it or leave it. Also, feel free to remind them that they will have to look to your sister when they are old and need assistance if they don't treat you well now. You're not the jerk or an ATM. You don't owe anyone an apology. But if you want to keep the peace, you could say something like this. "I'm sorry that I didn't react well to your news. It is your decision how to grow your family and live your life, and if you're happy, then I'm happy for you. But I want to make sure that you understand that I can no longer provide you with financial support. I feel like you've been taking advantage of my generosity. If the only way to get your forgiveness or to have a place in this family is to pay for it by supporting your kids financially, then I guess we all need to take some time apart." Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. I just heard the Mario coin sound. I think you have a notification on your phone, Reddit boy. But yeah, that sister is the jerk. There's nothing worse than people who pop out babies and expect others to pay for them. Hi, I'd like a free taco. I work at a taco shop, not Taco Bell, known for its little hash brown circles instead of fries. But another thing we're known for is Taco Tuesday. Yesterday was that lovely day. My boss loves to schedule me for all the rushes. The first time we met, he decided he loved me taking orders and I would not do anything else. We're working with a skeleton crew, but we function astonishingly well. The boss owns a few different locations, and he'll often come in and talk to us about how there's one specific person on drive-thru just for making drinks. I'm normally the one on the drive-thru, taking orders and dealing with everything at the window, plus anything else I'm tasked with taking care of that day. Like I said, skeleton crew. We're often picking up each other's slack. Anyway, for lunch rush, I spent 2 hours doing nothing but taking orders, so I knew when I came back for dinner it would only get worse. If I only knew. It was a boring Taco Tuesday, busy as any other and just as many frustrating customers, until we had the local high school drop in. Now, normally one of two people makes the schedule, Big Boss Man or Awesome Boss Man. For reasons I'm not going to get into, Awesome Boss wasn't available to make the schedule the last few weeks, and he's the one that normally keeps an eye on the school sporting events. Our store is the only one in the area open past 7 to 8, so when a sports event happens, everyone comes here and Awesome Boss tries to schedule extra people for it. That did not happen this week. Instead, Big Boss made the schedule and decided I'm good enough. I was not good enough. It was a Taco Tuesday, and some sport had just ended, and the boys seemed to have won by the way they were celebrating, carelessly spilling food everywhere and hanging out just everywhere that they could inside, leaving me giant messes to clean. It took me 20 minutes to just take the orders. No, like I've told everyone else in front of you, we don't have fries. Yes, asking if we have Whoppers is so hilarious after the first few guys. It was looking to be your normal group of high school boys, and I just let them be. I had been running back and forth, also taking my drive orders and dealing with those orders. I didn't have enough energy to chit-chat with my regulars for a second. Finally, I get through the group of boys and their coaches, and I'm happy to finally finish customers serving for a moment. Just as I'm about to take a moment to breathe in some air that doesn't smell like sweat or Axe body spray, in walks, I'm going to call him annoying customer. Now sure, I've had Karens and the such come in before. I know how to keep my cool and handle those people. This man would show me I still have a long way to go. Me. Hi, welcome to Taco Place. What can we get started for you? Jerk. Is it Taco Tuesday? Me. Yeah, it is, but we recently upped the price a few extra pennies.
That's fine. I want 3. No cheese. Everything else.
Me. Okay, that'll be, I don't know, it was like $6.
But it's Taco Tuesday.
Me. Yes, sir, but the extra stuff costs a little extra, and then there's another $1 worth of tax.
No. I don't want anything extra. Just no cheese, but extra lettuce and beef.
Me. Okay, that's still this price. Jerk.
No. You're not understanding me. I don't want any cheese. And instead of cheese, I want extra beef and lettuce.
Now, I've spent all day bending over backwards to help my coworker and satisfy customers best I can. But I'd been yelled at. This man lost all chances he had at getting any help. I understood he meant he wanted extra beef and lettuce in place of the cheese, but even when I substituted out, those things cost extra. So I take off the extra, give him his new total of 3-something, and away he goes. At this point, probably thinking he's won. I simply duck into the kitchen. Hey, Rose. Rose is our current night manager, and when Big Boss and Awesome Boss aren't there, she's in control. Rose had just seen the order come up on her screen, and I could see the 3 taco shells waiting to be made into tacos. She knew what was coming since our kitchen was right behind the front register. She had seen me get yelled at. She had seen me almost fall apart trying to handle the giant rush of people by myself before him, and she knew I already had a plan in mind. Give him as little of everything as you can without getting in trouble. She nods, and I watch as the tiniest scoop of beef is set on this taco and only 7 shreds of lettuce sit on top. Honestly, I don't like handing out these types of tacos because I'm like, the customer paid for a taco. We should give them a taco. But not with this man. I felt he was lucky with how much he was getting. I give him his 3 tacos. I'm expecting him to return to our counter with a complaint in a minute, tops, and I'm surprised as I watch him happily enjoy said tacos. Maybe this plan wasn't as satisfying as I'd hoped. He throws away his trash, and I keep him in the corner of my eye as I do some minor restocking. Then he's back at the counter. Either he's going to complain or he's going to order more food. Either way, I see an opportunity fall into my lap. Me. Hi, is everything okay?
Jerk. Yes, I ordered extra stuff on my tacos, and they didn't have the extra.
Me. Oh, I'm so sorry about that, sir. We can remake those for you if you've got your receipt.
I threw it away.
Me. That's a shame, but we really can't do anything without the receipt. The boss gets mad if we give out free food for no reason. He's obviously not happy as he goes digging through the trash for said receipt. He returns and places it in front of me. I look it over, knowing exactly what I'll see, but I still wanted to waste a few seconds of his day. Me. I'm sorry, sir, but according to your receipt, you didn't ask for anything extra.
Jerk. Yes, I did. I asked 3 times.
Me. And you yelled at me for how expensive that made your order, so we didn't charge you for them. Because they weren't on the order, the kitchen didn't put them on there. You seemed satisfied with that. Jerk.
Then I want a free taco since you messed up my order.
At this point, Rose stuck her head out of the kitchen and promptly told him, I'm not making you a free taco. You've yelled at my staff for simply doing their job, and you got exactly what you paid for. So I'm going to have to ask you to leave if you keep causing trouble. He made some stink about calling the boss, but we didn't hear anything that night, and I haven't gone in for my next shift. But I doubt anything will actually happen. If there was a problem with the tacos, why did he eat all the tacos? He was enjoying eating the tacos because he intended to go back up and complain to get more free tacos. He enjoyed them all the more with the knowledge of his perfect plan in place. Don't mess with my overtime. Many years ago, I worked as an engineer repairing retail customers' PCs. Our team was small, and there was often times when the amount of PCs needing repair was more than the team could get through during normal hours. In these circumstances, we were allowed voluntary overtime on Saturday and would get time and a half for it. The rule for the overtime was flexible. We could start when we wanted and finish when we wanted, and would get paid for each full 60 minutes we were clocked in for. Back then, my girlfriend, now wife, used to work until 2 p.m. on a Saturday, so I would go in for 9:30 a.m. and leave at 1:30 p.m., giving me plenty of time to pick her up. This worked out great for everyone. However, the company structure was a little strange, with the front-facing customer service under the management of one director and the back of house, including my team, under the management of another, and they despised each other, constantly trying to cause each other problems. And of course, the workers were always caught in the middle. One fateful Saturday, I was working and noticed the front-facing director walk up, see that I was there, and move on without saying anything. I didn't think anything of it, and a short while later left at 1:30 as normal. I got in as normal on Monday to find I had a meeting request from my director. Confused, I attended the meeting and I found both my director and the front director also there. Turns out the front director had arranged for a customer to bring in their PC for an urgent repair on Saturday, having confirmed I was there to fix it. On-the-spot repairs were very rare, reserved for only the most problematic or highest spending customers. Me not being there to look at it had caused the customer to have a meltdown in the shop in front of many other customers. Of course, the front director took the opportunity to bring this up with the MD to get one up on my director, leading to the Monday meeting where she was out for my blood. Luckily, as the overtime rules for our department were clear and I followed them, there was no direct action taken against me, with my director supporting me. However, one thing that did come from this was that we lost our flexible overtime. From that point on, if we wanted to do overtime on a Saturday, we must be there for the whole day. As I wasn't willing to lose my entire Saturday, overtime stopped. It took less than a month for the department's backlog to hit over 100 units. Our target was to have less than 15 at the end of each day. I'd originally wondered why my director didn't put up a fight when the new rule was set, but it didn't take long to see the number of customer service complaints and call waiting times skyrocket, all of which was the front director's responsibility. Not long after, my director approached me smiling to let me know that the front director had gone to the MD first to try to force us to do overtime, and when that failed, beg for the new rule to be removed. So the next Saturday, I was back earning a little extra cash, and that director didn't try to mess around with our hours again. Sometimes you just gotta let them fall on their faces. Your director apparently knew this. Good on them. When your enemy is making a mistake, don't interrupt them. Am I the jerk for not helping my pregnant roommate with everything? I live in the dorms and got a new roommate this semester because my old one went home. I had never met her before she moved in. She's currently 6 months pregnant and wants me to do more for her than I want to. We aren't friends, but because we share a room, she says I should support her more. After she moved in, I noticed the food from my little fridge that I brought from home kept going missing. I confronted her and she admitted she ate it, but said it wasn't her fault because she was hungry. I got a lock for the fridge and she's been really cold ever since. Then she got mad because I had a bad day one day last week, so my boyfriend came over. During the hours we can have visitors in the dorms, to watch TV and gave me a back rub, and she kept talking loudly about how she needs a massage. After he left, she tried to tell me I needed to give her a massage and rub her feet because she's hurting, but I refused because we aren't close enough for me to want to do that. Then she tried to tell me I can't have him over, but I don't see why she gets to set the rules. Then over the weekend, she wanted me to get food for her when I was studying and was mad when I told her to do DoorDash or something. Last night, she woke me up because she was having food cravings and wanted me to drive to the store. The only one open at that hour is about 30 minutes away. I refused, and she's been complaining all day about how I'm a jerk for not supporting her. Am I the jerk for not doing stuff for her? Not the jerk. Can you talk to the housing department at school and see if you can get a room change? She's using pregnancy as an excuse to be extra needy. Something tells me she's needy even when not pregnant. I wish I had a magic answer for you. Good luck. I'm currently pregnant, and OP's roommate is the type of pregnant person that I loathe. Believe it or not, other people should not be expected to drop everything in their lives to accommodate a pregnant person. If you want to give up your seat on the bus, that's actually nice. But to get your food eaten or be demanded to go get food for her cravings? Nah, get out of here. Especially people in OP's position. OP isn't the father. OP isn't even a friend that might be able to help from time to time. Roommate needs a reality check for when the baby is born. Not the jerk. Edit. I'm currently carrying twins and understand health concerns that fellow pregnant people have. I'm also not saying to completely forget basic manners and kindness towards those who are pregnant. Goodness, I'm not that horrible. I also don't want roommate to suffer. My post is strictly on those who continue to push boundaries and act entitled. Not the jerk, but roommate is. She got herself pregnant and now she can't take care of herself. You're not friends, but basically strangers sharing a room. You owe her nothing. Her demands are ridiculous and she's using her pregnancy as an excuse for everything. If you have an RA, I'd talk to them about her rules, demands, and inconveniences. It's above and beyond what a dorm roommate should have to do to survive. OP. We already talked to the RA. We had a meeting and tried to set boundaries. She wanted no guests, no locks on the fridge, no coming in late, and me doing all the cleaning, and I help her with more stuff. I wanted no taking my food, no getting up and turning the light on when I'm asleep. She does this all the time and it wakes me up. Shared cleaning, and to be left alone. The RA told her to stop taking my food and that I can keep the lock on the fridge, but we didn't come to an agreement on any rules. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her roommate? Please let us know. No wonder baby daddy ain't around. That poor baby's gonna grow up being raised by a Karen. Am I the jerk for kicking my girlfriend out after an argument? So adoption is pretty common in my family. I probably have more adopted cousins than biological ones, though I can't say for sure since it really doesn't matter in my family. I'm 22, male, and my younger brother, who's 15, was adopted by my parents when he was 7. Our dads were close, and he used to come around a lot. His parents split when he was about 5, and his mom ended up in jail a few months later. His dad then passed due to medical issues when he was 7, and my parents took him in because he would have gone into the system. So he's lived with us since I was 14, and I do see him as my little brother, and we are family. His biological mom is still around, but isn't allowed to see him. The problem comes in with my girlfriend. We've been together for 2 years, and we've met each other's family, and we have gotten along great with them. About a month ago, she came to me complaining about how her sister is adopting, saying it was cheating, especially since she doesn't have any fertility issues. I told her that it doesn't matter if the kid is adopted or not, and that my brother is adopted. She didn't say anything else to me about it after that. However, she has stopped calling my brother. She just calls him by his name now. Yesterday, she and her friend, who is also my friend and introduced us, were talking about how she is so happy that my parents will be her in-laws. He agreed and said that my parents and my brother would make great in-laws. She then corrected him and told him that my brother wouldn't be her in-law since he's adopted. He had no idea how to respond and ended up telling me about it. This caused an argument between us, with me saying my brother is my brother and her insisting that he isn't and that there's a difference. She told me to sleep somewhere else that night. I told her no, this is my home too, and if she has the issue, she should sleep somewhere else. This caused her to scream at me, calling manipulative and horrible before leaving to sleep at her parents'. Her dad, who I really get along with, has asked to speak with me, and I've gotten some aggressive messages from some other members of her family. I didn't think I was in the wrong, but with so many people upset with me, I think I might be. I brought it up, so maybe I should have left. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I don't see this relationship surviving this. She doesn't see adoption as being a viable path into a family. The comment about cheating because her sister can give birth to a biological kid but doesn't want to? Frankly, I think your girlfriend is a huge jerk. Family is family, doesn't have to be connected by blood. Family is who you choose. OP, this woman has shown you who she is. Believe her. I would end things. Yes, to think she's already opening up talks about having OP's parents as in-laws. Now imagine being family with someone whose notion of family is that warped. Also, not the jerk, but you will be if you carry on being with someone who doesn't consider your younger brother family, just because you don't share the same DNA. Oh, she's a massive jerk. Not the jerk, and genuinely, it's so over-repeated in this sub, but you need to reevaluate this relationship since it seems she fundamentally can't respect a huge aspect of your family. Not the jerk. And you didn't kick her out. She failed to kick you out and then went screaming and stomping to cry to her parents. I'm not going to say straight out break up because I don't know you nor your relationship, but this is a major character flaw and something you should seriously evaluate before moving forward with the relationship. She will never accept over half of your family and will make sure that everyone else around her knows her feelings in the matter. Plus, she will paint you as a bad person after every disagreement, seeing as she had no issue accusing you of pretty bad stuff, and few things are as difficult as repairing a reputation, especially after those sorts of accusations. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Adopted sibling is still a sibling. Your girlfriend's an idiot, bruh. Neighbors finally talking to me now that their actions may result in cutting off access to their property, looking for advice. I moved into my place early 2020. The new neighbors beside me moved in late 2020. The property line between us I never really thought about because it was full of trees, shrubs basically. Great privacy for me to enjoy my yard and deck. One day in spring of 2021, I came home and my neighbors had ripped down all of my privacy bushes. I was so mad, but since I didn't exactly know where the line was, I just let them know I was not happy now that I can see into their yard. Fast forward throughout the spring and summer last year, they used my property to drive their side-by-side through to access their shed, ripping up the nice grass, parking their trailer on my property, mowing portions of my lawn, trying to make it look like it was theirs, and weed whacking my grass. I'm a working mom. Property maintenance is not my priority. After every incident or act that I caught them doing, I would talk to them and tell them to get off my property or stop using my property. I was very adamant to keep it simple, always saying, "Please stop doing that and get off of my property." The second time I caught the wife on my property with the weed whacker, she yelled at me so angry that she had to look over and see my yard was a mess from her property. I pointed out that she's the one who took the shrubbery and privacy barrier down. Anyways, after every encounter, they would stop for a bit and then return to use my property for whatever was convenient to them. It got to the point I sent them a letter to be crystal clear on my boundaries, but they didn't stop. So in late 2021, I paid for a land survey to end the madness and save my sanity. Stakes were all marked, and turns out I have more property than I originally thought. I didn't build anything late last fall because they seemed to have stopped coming over. But they returned from the south after this winter, and not even a week in, they were cutting my trees. This is the last straw, and is why I'm taking action now. My property line goes through stairs that is their access on this side of the house. I strung up a string along the line and prepared to put up some T-posts last night. They finally came out to talk to me, asking if I'm really going to build a fence through their stairs, and that they need access. Citing excuses about the property line and where they thought it was because of other features around, aka not their fault apparently. At this point, I'm pretty much at wit's end and being pretty blunt, saying that the only reason you're wanting to open a line of communication now is because it's affecting you directly. And why would I give you access to my stairs? Basically kind of being a jerk to them. But at the same time, it's all my frustration coming out after a year of being ignored and slowly watching my property get destroyed. My question is it petty to build a fence and cut access off to their stairs/yard on this side of their house? Or is it justified given all the times they could have resolved or even just talked to me about using my property? I am pretty easygoing. I would have probably agreed to some things if they had just talked to me about it beforehand. Edit. Thanks, team. I will speak to my partner tonight and show him this thread. My thought now is to draft and send a letter stating to stop using the stairs ASAP due to liability, and I will continue to build a temporary fence to ensure this. I will also communicate that we are open to sell a portion of the land because we know they cannot be trusted via friendly neighbors or contracts, and I hate being a jerk and limiting their use of this land, but this is up to them to approach us with a purchase proposal and be open to reasonable negotiation. I think this is the way. Thank you. It's your property. Therefore, I'd be asking if they get hurt on the stairs they use on your property, it could potentially be a liability for you. I wouldn't trust them not to hold you accountable if something happened. Therefore, I'd find out what I'm legally able to do and take back every inch of my property and cut off their access to it completely. They're trespassing every time they use those stairs. It's potentially a liability for you, and forget them. Had they been considerate neighbors, you would have left them alone. Now they want to play the victim when you exercise your rights as the property owner? No, sorry. Too bad, so sad. Tell them the lesson to be learned from this is to not be a neighbor from heck in the future. Work half day, paid for full. So this happened a few years ago when I was on an apprenticeship at an office job. I had been working there about 3 months when the story begins. The job I was doing was essentially an admin role. I'd do address and phone number changes on client profiles, send out letters requesting information, and sorting out posts that came back. This was all done through the database where I'd get my to-dos from. After a few weeks training, I was picking it up quite quickly. I'm reasonably good with computers, and it was a fairly simple system. I made an Excel with a few macros, and I was flying through the work. At my 3-month review with manager, she pulled up my stats, and I was more than clearing my daily target to-dos. In fact, I was clearing double. Expecting her to say, "Well done," I was surprised when she instead questioned if I was doing the work correctly. She was concerned that I might have been rushing and making mistakes, although at this stage of the apprenticeship, 10% of my work was being checked by the quality team, and I'd passed all my checks, which was on the same report she had in her hand. So she set a goal of reducing my amount cleared more in line with the target by the next month. So I decided to scrap the macros and do it all the slow way for a month, double-checking everything. It was draining because I was continually focusing on how many I had done that day and making some last longer just to pad out my day, and so I would look like I was working. End of the month comes and I have the follow-up meeting. I'm down to about 20% over my daily target, so it's obvious I've taken on board what was said and made changes. My quality score is still perfect. Instead of recognizing what I did to try and comply, my manager tells me off about still being over the target and suggests I'm still rushing my work. She scheduled another meeting a month later, and that was the end. By the way, both the meetings were documented, and I was sent copies of what I had agreed to. Well, here comes the compliance. I started using the macros again and would complete my target in about half my working day, then stop doing anymore. I had to stay in the office for a full day to clock out on time, but I wouldn't do any more to-dos. Now the office had about 150 to 200 staff on site in a few teams, but the room I was in was about 20 people doing the same job as me, and managers rarely came in. After the first day of just sitting on my phone, I decided I needed a project. I found 2 large bags of rubber bands in the stationery room and had a great idea, so I built a rubber band ball from scratch. Fast forward about 2 weeks of me doing work in the mornings and rubber band ball building in the afternoons, to when the site manager, 2 levels above my manager, was giving someone from head office a tour. Yes, in the afternoon. Nothing was said, but I knew he wasn't happy by the fact he kept looking over at me while the visitor was talking to other people. Inevitably, next morning, he's invited me to a meeting with him and the floor manager, the level above my manager. So I take my notes and go see him. After proving that I had been meeting my target and showing that I had been told not to go over the target, I was sent back to work. Don't know what happened after that, but about an hour later I had an email from my manager telling me to disregard the target and complete as much as I'm able to. She also canceled our meeting. A week or so after that, I was transferred to the team that implemented new processes and had lots of fun completing the apprenticeship by writing and sharing the macros that originally started it all. By the way, Rubber Band Ball is proudly on a shelf at home, 20 centimeters in diameter. Why are companies like this? Wow, they're going so much over their target with no mistakes. Make it stop. That's called, we don't want to let anyone know what we can do at full speed, so please go slower. You're making us all look like slackers. Jobs like that should be salary with weekly targets, so once you're done with your weekly target, you just go home and still get paid for the full week. Am I the jerk for arguing with my husband for the picture he had for my contact photo on his phone? My husband bought a new phone last week. Before that, he used to have one of those old phones that didn't have many features. I was happy for him and helped him learn how to use some features he's never seen before. Yesterday morning, I couldn't find my phone before I went to work. I woke him up to ask him to call me so that I could find it, but he handed me his phone and told me to do it myself. I took his phone, opened the call log, and searched for my contact number. I saw that he had a picture of me, my face, from my contact photo. I was mad. I woke him up again to ask him why he did that. He said it was normal, and he did it with his family and friends even. I told him I didn't give him permission, and he should have asked if I was comfortable with having my picture there. He said I have a ton of pictures of him in my phone, but I keep them in a hidden app so no one sees them, and this way I'm protecting his privacy. Besides, I got permission for every single picture before saving them. I demanded he remove it, but he fought back and said I'm being bossy and controlling. I told him my face was there. He again said it wasn't a huge deal and that I should chill. I snapped and said I wasn't going to let him convince me to be okay with this. We fought some more, and he removed the picture and kept pouting and venting about how I keep trying to dictate how he lives and what he does, and said it's become too much. Info: I live in an area far from home, and I don't know anyone here yet, and I was worried if he loses his phone, my info will be linked to my photo. You're the jerk. Unless you go through society with a veil on, people are going to see your face, so the privacy argument seems far-fetched. What's the problem? ETA, your husband is right. You are bossy and controlling. It's also just the contact photo, which only he sees unless she calls him, or he has his contacts open and people are around, and it would be tiny anyways. That's not even the lock screen or the home screen image like a ton of people have, including myself. Weird hill to die on. I don't use photos on contacts because it's confusing. But seriously? And why does she hide all the photos she takes of him, normal photos, on a secret app? She sounds off. Maybe info is missing and she works for the CIA or something, so withholding judgment until she confirms she's not a secret agent in the wilderness. Throw your trash in my yard? Enjoy moving. My now ex-neighbor was pretty trashy. Cars sitting on blocks in the yard, cigarettes hanging out of her mouth while she was pregnant, and blasting Kid Rock. Well, this lady decided that paying $1 per trash bag was just too much. Our township will only pick up your trash if it is in one of the approved purple bags though, so normal trash bags will just be left behind. The trash truck drives right past them. Her solution? Buy normal trash bags at the dollar store and have her 8-year-old toss them over the fence into my yard. Now their trash is my problem. After confronting her, she just laughed, so I called the cops. They said that since the kid was so young and there was no proof his parents told him to do it, there was nothing that they could do. So this went on for about 4 months. Me taking the bags of trash they toss into my yard, wrapping them in purple bags that I paid out of pocket for, and putting them out to the curb. Pretty annoying. Not to mention the extra $3 or so a week I'm spending on trash bags. I'm slowly growing to hate this lady. It was annoying at first, but I was getting mad. Mind you, I own my home and she was just renting hers. So I get a hold of their landlord and I offer to buy the house for a decent amount above market value, 17%. He jumps at the offer, and soon I'm the proud owner of the house next door to me. Sure, it cost me $71,000, but what price do you put on peace of mind? The very first thing I did was serve them an eviction notice, in person, across the same fence that they like to throw trash over. That was 31 days ago. As of today, the unit is empty. I don't know where they went, but they're someone else's problem now. All because she didn't want to pay for her own trash bags. I think I'm going to knock that house down and make my yard bigger. I've been wanting to put in a handball court. Note for the profile stalkers, this is not the same neighbor with the husky. I like those neighbors. Am I the jerk for exposing my ex to his mother? I, 45 female, am currently divorced from my ex, Thomas, 47 male, of 30 years. We ended up seeing a lawyer to help with dividing stuff. Everything was pretty much wrapped up till he said he no longer wanted any part of our kids' lives, who are 5 and 12. I didn't argue with him about it since I already know what it's like having a parent who doesn't want you around or want to be part of your life. I asked what he wanted me to tell the kids, and he just said, "Whatever you think is best, I don't care. I don't want to be a parent anymore." Everything was in agreement and signed with no fuss. A few weeks later, I get a call from my ex-mother-in-law asking if we could meet each other. When I came over, she broke down crying and begging to let my ex see his kids again. I was confused about what she meant because not once did he contact me after meeting the lawyer. She went on about how my ex said he really missed them and that I was being a petty jerk for taking full custody and that he was crying for days about it. I told her my version of events and she called it BS, saying her son wouldn't lie, especially not about his kids. Then I decided to call him in front of her. He didn't know she and I were meeting that day. I said, "Hey, your son has a soccer game in a few days," which he did, and I was wondering if you wanted to go. I know he'd really love it and he'd be happy to see you. He instantly said, "No, I already said I'm not doing this anymore." I raised my voice a bit, saying, "Well, what about holidays and birthdays? Because we never discussed any of it and your family might want to see them." He just said, "My family already thinks they aren't mine anyways, so it doesn't matter." I asked, "Well, how do you think this is going to affect Denise, his mom? She's over the moon about them."
He just said, "She loves me more than the kids, so I doubt this will be an issue for her."
After a bit more talking, we finally hung up. Ex-mother-in-law was straight-faced and nodded at everything that just happened, saying, okay. She asked me to leave and said we would be in touch. Later that day, I got a call from my ex saying how it's my fault he was kicked out of his mom's house and possibly will be taken off her will. Also, that none of his family members will talk to him because of what ex-mother-in-law heard. He threw a lot of insults at me before I hung up, and now him and his mates keep calling and texting me. My friend is saying I shouldn't have said anything in the first place and I ruined his life. Edit. Yes, I plan to let Denise see the kids because I know she just wants to give them the world along with the rest of his family. Second edit. I want to address something because this keeps coming up and I can't keep up with everyone. Due to actions he and I took when we were younger, my Christian parents thought it would be best he and I be married at the time. Not the jerk. He had the right to sign off his rights. He did not have the right to paint you in a bad light and make you look to be at fault and evil or manipulative. That's defamation of character. You had the right to set the record straight. His mom had the right to go no contact with her son, a grown man who didn't want contact with his actual kids. Sounds like he's getting a taste of his own medicine, aka karma. Not the jerk. All you did was offer him an opportunity to see his kids. This was done because he cried to mommy about how the mean ex was depriving him of that opportunity. He did the rest. My mom keeps being rude to my wife, so I kicked her out. I, 33 male, am beyond angry about this. Some of my siblings are telling me it was an overreaction while also mad at what she did. I'd really like some thoughts because the house seems divided. My wife Kara and I were friends for years. She was in a very toxic relationship for 3 years until she had begged us, me and our close friends, to help her get out. It was difficult, but we made it possible. We all pitched in for her to stay as far as possible while she got a restraining order and all of that jazz. We each took turns going to visit. Then she found out she was pregnant, so I helped out more. Her ex passed when my stepson, who's 7 now, was 4 months old, so since then, we all became sort of like uncles and aunts to him. Around that time, I knew I developed feelings for her, but we never ever did anything because she had personal issues to process. It didn't feel right at the time. But yes, we did start a relationship 3 years later. She's the one who first admitted she's in love with me, so things went from there. We just got married. She's 5 months pregnant with our second. I will say that, yeah, my mom had issues at the start of our relationship because she believed Kara was faking what happened to her just to make me feel sorry for her and take care of them. We went through a period of not talking until she apologized, so we mended things somewhat. My mom came to stay at our house, which was my dad's house, until he decided to give ownership to me when they moved. He passed 10 months ago, and with the economy, my mom couldn't stay where they were living before. We're still trying to work out where she can live long term. I heard my mom get into an argument with my wife because she was trying to redecorate the nursery against Kara's wishes. All I heard was my mom telling her that she's not the lady of the house just because her fake victim sob story worked on me. She looked flustered when I demanded her to tell me what that meant. And basically, she held on to that same belief, but she was willing to put up with my choices on who I marry so she doesn't lose me. Everything she had to say infuriated me. And then, seeing how upset Kara was by everything, I called my brother to come pick my mom up because she can't stay here right now. My mom wouldn't stop crying to not do this to her just for being honest. She's still at my brother's, but they keep trying to talk me into letting her come back because this was my dad's house, and of course she wants to feel closer to him. But after asking Kara if this is the first time she said anything, she revealed my mom has told her numerous times what she thinks of her and kept it from me because she knew it would hurt our relationship. For that reason, I haven't let my mom come back. It's hard because I know what this house means to her and that she's still sad about my dad, but also can't forgive her for upsetting my wife. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your mom isn't the lady of the house just because she was married to your dad at one point in time. What she said to your wife is extremely disrespectful. She, your mom, doesn't get to try and guilt trip you just because she got caught red-handed in mistreating your pregnant wife. Not the jerk. Your wife is pregnant and does not need the stress. Your son is 7 and he can overhear all of this. He's old enough to put things together and remember this. Being your dad's house has nothing to do with this. She can live elsewhere, and I bet your brother is saying this because he doesn't want her at his place. Why was it your dad's house and not your mom and dad's house? wondering how it passed her and went to you. OP, because he was still alive when he let me take ownership of the house and they moved out together. You are the jerk. Your mom agreed with your dad's wish to give you the house, but honestly, if they were married, and it seems they were married until he passed, the house is 50% hers as well, technically. Yeah, your mom is a huge jerk to your wife, but she was taken advantage of financially by your dad and now you. OP, technically, no. It's not like she didn't agree to it. They didn't want the house going to someone else. It was my dad's house before they were married, but either way, they weren't going to stay with the house because they were moving. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his mom? Please let us know. Entitled Dad, my baby deserves other people's cupcakes. I worked in a nursery school in an expensive neighborhood of an expensive city. We had 24 3-year-olds in the class. By May, we took a walking field trip one day a week to a playground 4 blocks away. We'd take snacks and some balls to play with on the basketball court and baseball field, and at least 4 parents would come with us to help supervise because the area was spread out and kids can zip away unless extra eyes help keep track. The kids had been playing, and of course, there are other kids and parents and nannies, etc. at the playground as well. We got all our kids together for a snack. They sit on picnic blankets and have crackers and apples and water. It's nursery school, so there's always a chaotic aspect to it. Trying to keep everyone seated and hand sanitize and pass food in water cups and give additional servings when kids are done, collect trash. This day's special though. It was a birthday. One kid was wearing a colorful paper crown, and the parent was one of our chaperones and brought cupcakes for the class. Hooray! The kids ate their healthy food, and we sang happy birthday, and several adults helped pass out the cupcakes to our large group of 3-year-olds clamoring for sugary treats. In the midst of all this hurry, a dad and his kid bellied up to the picnic table where the box of cupcakes are, and he had the gumption to ask, "My daughter saw your cupcakes, and she was wondering if she can have one too." The girl was about the same age as our class, and she was entirely quiet. I had no idea if she had asked her dad or if it was his idea. She definitely wasn't fussing about it or asking as far as I saw. I found the request completely exasperating. I told him, "You can see we have a large school group to look after. I don't know if there will be any cupcakes left for your kid. Excuse me, I need to pass out cupcakes to the class." I dropped off some cupcakes and came back for more. The guy was still there and speaking with the birthday kid's parents, who, much nicer than I, passed this entitled jerk a cupcake for his kid. Whatever. The end? Nope. A week or 2 later, we were back at the playground on our regular day. To exit the park, the kids had to walk up a long ramp to the gate and exit onto the sidewalk we take back to school. Our jostling group had their jackets and were finding partners' hands and such, when my coworker and I noticed the cupcake-begging dad is there, setting up a birthday party for his daughter at the picnic tables. Coworker and I are toward the front of the line, and we emerge from the ramp onto the sidewalk, while we wait for the rest of the kids and adults to straggle up the ramp. The fence surrounding the playground is covered with thick vines that look like a hedge. You can't see through them at all. My coworker and I were talking about noticing the girl's dad setting up the party. I cracked a joke that I should have gone up to him and asked for 24 cupcakes for our whole class. We had just started to cackle when the dad stepped through the gate. There was no way he didn't hear us, 6 feet away on the other side of the fence, walking towards us as we spoke the last couple sentences. He scattered by, looking down, and didn't say anything. I mean, if I had more cupcakes than I needed, and one kid at the playground wanted one, I wouldn't lose sleep over handing them one. That said, by asking for one just because she wanted one regardless of appropriateness, he's modeling bad etiquette and teaching her that getting what you want is more important than respecting boundaries. Not everything is meant for us all of the time, and she's old enough to start learning that lesson. Everyone who's saying that the dad is not entitled would have been on the same boat as that dad. Imagine you're out with your family having a picnic and a stranger comes up to you and says, "Hey, my daughter saw the bag of chips you guys had. Can I have it?" While also bringing his daughter almost to guilt trip you into it. Different scenario, same parent. That's rude and plain out odd to do. OP. Exactly. Who does that? Extra cupcakes for you. If all the other kids in the play area had lined up with their caregivers to beg for a cupcake, there certainly would not have been enough. And when they started bawling because they didn't get one, guess whose fault that would be? It's a tough lesson to learn that not everything is for you. On the bright side, the thing you want is right over at the shop. Let's go get one. Well, what do you think? Was the dad an entitled jerk or not? Please let us know.
If we had extras, I wouldn't have minded giving him one. I don't know, maybe it's just me.
Am I the jerk for brushing my hair in spite of my grandma? Context. I, 18 female, have kind of curly hair. It's like halfway, I guess. The bottom curls a lot, but near my scalp it doesn't curl nearly as much. Because of my curls, if I brush my hair, it turns into a giant poofy lion's mane basically. It's all frizzy and staticky and just looks bad. However, I didn't really discover this until I was about 14. My hair was wild growing up. Well, growing up, my grandma always made a fuss over my hair. No matter what you did, it'd be frizzy when dry. So every time I was at her house, she'd have me brush my hair because she never believed that I had already brushed it. I hope you can see where this is going. Some additional context. I haven't seen my grandma in a few years due to going to boarding school in a different country. I stayed there for about 2 years, but on breaks I'd only see my parents and friends, not my grandparents. When I returned home for good, my grandparents moved away and I didn't get the chance to see them due to lockdown. Well, I finally got the chance to see my grandparents again, and we went to their house for the weekend. With the way my hair is now, it's a bit frizzy as it's drying, but when it's completely dry, the frizz becomes a lot less noticeable due to the curls. I also finger brush to minimize the frizz. My grandma saw me while my hair was drying and told me to go brush my darn hair, and that by this age you should already know how to brush your hair. I told her that brushing my hair so much is what made my hair so frizzy, so I refused. She told me that was BS and that I'd better brush it before our special brunch. I just ignored her for the most part and went into the guest room to do homework. That was until our special brunch, when I came out of the room to leave. My grandma saw me and my curls and said, "Look how much better your hair looks when it's brushed. I told you so." I was literally dumbfounded. Did she seriously think that my hair was brushed? I told her it wasn't brushed and she didn't believe me, so I went and got a brush, walked up to her, and brushed my hair. Wouldn't you know it, it was a disaster. The look on her face was priceless. She got all angry at me, saying that I just ruined her family photos. Guess that's why the brunch was so special, and that I needed to fix my hair. I told her that there was nothing I could do now, and she was the one who told me to brush my hair anyway. My mom said I was a jerk for this, but my dad said that it was hilarious. Away from my mom, of course. Though I do kinda see why I'm the jerk, because she paid for a professional photographer, which I didn't know until she told me after the fact. And she already told me my hair looked good and I ruined it on purpose to spite her. So yeah, am I the jerk? Edit. Wow, this blew up. Thank you all. I just woke up, by the way. But while my grandma is stubborn and stuck in her ways, I still love her. She's usually good to be around. It's just me needing to look presentable. Also, my mom and grandma both have straight hair, for those wondering. Thank you for all the support and tips though. Not the jerk. Anyone with any shade of curly hair knows if you brush the curl, you're getting Diana Ross hair. You tried to tell her. I'm a dude who usually had short hair. Grew it a bit longer recently, and it turns out it's somewhat curly and wavy. When I brush it the wrong way or wind blows the wrong way, it looks like a bird built a nest on my head. You want to talk to my manager? Okay. This happened about 13 years ago. I was a field service engineer for a national retail chain. Basically, I was the IT guy who drove around in a company vehicle servicing the computer networks in the stores. The way the company was organized, there were corporate employees and there were retail employees. Being a corporate employee, I received corporate stock as a small part of my salary, and my starting pay was 3 times the rate of any store manager. Because I always put out fires, I often found myself in the awkward position of dealing with store managers who honestly thought that they were the store owners and that I was just the hired help. This was truly ironic, as I actually did own a very small piece of the corporation, whereas the average store manager did not. One day, I got orders to replace a server in a store not too far from the house. I worked out of my house, but kept parts in the truck, and also the back room of another store nearby. So I show up to the store where the server needed to be replaced. It was my second stop of 3 scheduled that day. I walk in the store wearing my very obvious corporate uniform and name tag with the logo. The store owner, retail manager, instantly demands to know what I'm doing in her store. I get this all the time, nothing new. I calmly explain that my boss wants me to upgrade one of the store servers, hardware replacement, and I even show her where it is that I will be working. I explain that it will take about an hour and that the POS registers might go offline for about 5 minutes. She isn't happy, but she reluctantly allows me into the room where the server is and I start working. When I'm just about done, the POS registers go down as I'm switching them to the new server, which is not fully hooked up yet. It was at this point where I realize I have forgotten to bring in a couple of cables that I need to finish hooking the new server into the store network. So I run out to the truck to get the required cables. I'm gone about 2 minutes. When I get back, the store manager is sitting at the table in front of the server, and she's got food spread out all over the table. The server is under the table. I tell the store manager I need to finish hooking up the server, gesturing under the table. The store manager tells me I'll have to come back in an hour after her lunch break. I'm shocked into total silence. Then a cashier bursts into the room, panicked that the registers aren't working and the checkout lines are getting backed up. I explain to the manager that I have to fix that server now or the registers will not work. The manager tells me I should have thought of that before I started working on her lunch break area. I calmly tell the store manager that she'll have to take a break later or find somewhere else to eat her lunch. She tells me I'm rude and incompetent and demands to speak to my manager immediately. Okie dokie. I call up my manager using my corporate issue iPhone and quickly explain the situation and then walk into the server room to hand the iPhone to the store manager. While she's on the phone with my manager, I head out to the front of the store to explain and apologize that the registers are going to be down for a few more minutes. I can't hear exactly what the store manager is telling my manager, but I can tell that it's a heated conversation and I clearly heard the word fired mentioned a few times. It's clear that the store owner, or retail manager, wants me to be fired for daring to try to interrupt her lunch break. Unfortunately for her, my direct supervisor was about 5 to 6 levels above the retail district manager. So the store's manager was complaining loudly about interrupting my work to the manager of her manager's manager's manager. A few minutes later, the store manager walks out of the room awkwardly, balancing bits of pieces of her lunch spread. I immediately go back to working the new server up and rebooting the POS systems so that they will sync on the new server and the cashiers can get back to work. Everyone is happy now, except the store owner, because her lunch break was ruined. The main part of my task is done now, but it takes me another 15 minutes to clean up my mess and reorganize my truck to get ready for my next stop, which will be about a 1-hour drive from my current location. As I'm doing this, I see the retail district manager. I've met her before, going into the store. She walks back out of the store with the former store manager who's carrying a box of her personal items. Okay, Karen, she's fired. Happy now? I've just come back from a quick trip to the States, via 2 days in Germany. Business, don't ask. So of course, being British and having read so much about people's experience in places like the Wall of Marts, well, I had to see one for myself. I'll admit, I went to a load of other places and I can't remember what uniforms people wore, so details are sparse in that respect. This story starts with me walking through the Wart Mall, at once impressed with the range and the prices, and faintly horrified by some of the food. As I'm walking through, I hear the dreaded harumphing of an approaching needy wild Karen. She wasn't looking at me, but at a girl. Now, the girl was wearing jeans, jacket, handbag, and absolutely no uniform. The Karen starts whipping up a storm of demands and threats, and the poor girl looked like she was about to cry. Something had to be done. I decided that I'd intervene, but before I'd taken 2 steps, a genuine, bona fide suit-wearing legend arrived. And, alright, I didn't know he was a legend immediately, so I'm getting ahead of myself. Legend, booming over Karen's squawking diatribe. What seems to be the problem? Karen was taken aback by this voice, but soon regained hers and started complaining about everything the girl hadn't done, and how she should be fired, blah blah blah. The guy turns to the girl and says, "Right, I'm officially promoting you to customer. You're fired. Enjoy your shopping experience." The girl had clearly figured out what he was doing and couldn't stop grinning. The legend turns back to Karen and says, as the title suggests, "She's fired. Happy now?" Karen saw the girl still smiling and decided she was even less happy, nearly shouting, "But I want her to get something or the other." And the legend stops her in her tracks and says, "That's a customer you're harassing. If you continue to harass her or any other customer in this store, I'll have those large men from security haul you out of the shop." Karen harumphed again, albeit more quietly, stuck her nose up in the air, and stalked off. As she got to the end of the aisle, the teenager just burst out laughing, and it was such an infectious laugh, the legend joined in. Brilliant. Karen's supervisor harasses me. I get her fired. I work for a contractor doing custodial work for a casino. To preface this, I took this job mainly because it did not involve management in any way. I have worked in management most of my career and was just burnt out. When I started this job, I was made aware by the recruiter/assistant, who I will call Amy, she's lovely, that a lot of the people that worked at the site only spoke Spanish, and that there may be some difficulties with communication from time to time. This wasn't a problem for me, as Amy spoke English and was currently managing the contract because the actual contract manager was on medical leave due to having a surgery. I am the kind of person that works very hard, mainly because I take pride in my work ethic. As soon as I started, I downloaded Duolingo, an app that is used to teach foreign languages, and began to learn as much Spanish as I could so I could better communicate with my coworkers. I'm still learning, but know enough to understand my coworkers most of the time. Most of my coworkers are lazy. They're oftentimes on their phones while on the casino floor, huddled in groups, or hiding in their locker rooms to avoid doing work. I, on the other hand, have regularly gotten compliments from the company we are in a contract with about my work ethic, so much so that the president himself has sent emails to my company to show his gratitude for my hard work, as well as giving me some free merchandise with the company's logo. Here's where the story gets more interesting. We are ridiculously short-staffed. On a regular shift, we're supposed to have 10 custodians working, cleaning the machines, the bathrooms, keeping trash off of the casino floors, taking out trash, mopping the bar and restaurant, restocking all the supplies, etc. Oftentimes, we will have 5 people on a shift or less, and with my coworkers being fairly lazy, that means a lot of stuff doesn't get done. I'm regularly doing most of the shift's workload by myself, as well as picking up the slack for the other shifts because they are too extremely short-staffed. The actual contract manager finally comes back from medical leave about 3 months into me working there. We will call her Sally. At first, me and Sally got along great. She thanks me for my work ethic and for everything I've been doing. All of that changes when I asked for 3 days off. We had been working mandatory overtime, and up until then, I was there for nearly 60 hours every week because we were short-staffed. Initially, Sally agrees to my time off request. I filled out the paperwork and made copies for myself just in case, managerial background. A week before the days I requested came up, and she puts out the schedule, and my time off wasn't applied. I approach Sally and ask her why, and she says that someone else put in for time off. This other person is the laziest of all of my coworkers and regularly acts as a supervisor because she's worked there the longest and is the only person that can understand a little bit of English. I tell Sally that I think this is extremely unfair considering that I put in my time off request over 2 months ago and had made sure that no one else had asked for the same days off beforehand. Sally explains that she doesn't have any paperwork to prove that, so I give her my copy, which I had placed in my work bag. This is when Sally decides to show her true colors. Do you want to do my job? Do you think you can manage this case better than I do? No? I don't pay you to come in here and argue with me. You aren't a manager. You aren't a supervisor. You are a janitor. That's it. That's all I pay you for. I keep what Sally said in mind and just keep my head down at work for a few months after this. At this point of my employment, Sally is getting in trouble by the higher-ups for the lack of employees and retention that is occurring at our site, as well as the company we work for not satisfied with her performance managing everyone. It's not really a secret as we have a regional and district management coming in frequently to try and help get people hired and play peacekeepers between Sally and the casino CEO. Finally, we are getting new people hired on thanks to a temp agency that was contracted in to help. A lot of the new hires only speak English. The others only speak Spanish. Other than the lazy coworker who is now on vacation, 3 weeks, the only person that can speak/understand both English and Spanish is me. The morning the new hires arrive, everyone is gathered in the office, including Sally's boss. They go through orientation, only speaking English, for the new hires and begin to give everyone their assignments. This is when Allie comes up to me. J. Sacred Art, I need you to train the new hires today and make sure everyone else is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Me. Does this mean that I'm being made a supervisor? Sally, who apparently forgot our previous conversation, "No, but you're the only one that can speak English and Spanish, and so I need you to make sure everyone's doing what they're scheduled to do." Me, with a blank expression. "I'm sorry, Sally, but I can't do that. I'm not a manager, I'm not a supervisor, and I'm not a translator. I'm a janitor. That's all you pay me for, remember?" Sally at this point is trembling with rage and starts screaming at me about doing what I'm told to do and dropping my attitude, etc. I looked her dead in the eye with her supervisor, whom she forgot was behind her, and pulled my resignation form out of my bag and handed it to her and walked out, knowing full well that now they were going to have a lot more issues because their best worker quit and there was no one that could effectively communicate between the workers and the company we were contracted with. Skip forward to the next week and I get a phone call from Mr. Regional Manager. "Hello, J. Sacred Art. This is Mr. So-and-so. I wanted to formally apologize for the behavior of our former employee, Miss Sally. She's been relieved of her position, and we would like you to come back and work with us in a supervisory position. I am now a supervisor, and they are paying for me to take Spanish lessons, which once I complete, I am supposed to get a significant raise." Entitled Kid Next Door uses binoculars to peer into my window. Backstory. Neighbors have 3 boys, all of whom are under the age of 7. In my first encounter with the mom, she promptly tells me, not asks, that her kids wonder. I naively thought that meant there might be the odd rogue ball episode or something, so don't protest at the time. Our yards are unfenced, and we share a driveway. Oh boy, was I wrong. My yard, back deck, front garden, and even the inside of my house were seen as an extension of their space. The boys would even have sword fight tournaments on my back deck, off my kitchen. The parents would literally do nothing. I was put in a position many times to ask for more privacy as it was affecting my work and a general sense of well-being, as I am a very private person. It took some push, but finally things got a bit better. But they still wonder. However, to a level I am not willing to cause drama over. This past early winter, I decided to put in security cameras. I live alone in a not-so-great area, and I wanted some peace of mind. I also wanted to document encroachments in case it got bad again. In that time, the cameras have picked up a lot of encroachment from kids, but I did not raise the issue because the relationship with parents is peaceful and I wanted to keep it that way. Fast forward to yesterday, my camera picks up a clip of the middle kid peering into my window with a pair of binoculars. I send the clip to the parents, explaining one of my cameras picked it up and that I'm not comfortable with this behavior. It's inappropriate and an invasion of my privacy. They send a note back saying he was only trying to see if I was home so he could say hello. Then they insisted on knowing more about my security cameras, what they can see, and if they pick up when they're playing in their yard. I explained that they don't, as they only pick up motion in my yard. But if the kids are in my yard, which they are, a lot, they are recorded. The parents are insisting that I take the cameras down. Neighbor trespasses in my garden, ends up getting her own husband arrested. I, 29 female, don't have any kids, but I do have my younger sister who's 16, who's lived with me for around 10 years, and we have a trampoline still in our back garden from when she was younger. Neighbor to the left of me has 4 kids and moved in a year ago. 2 weeks ago, Glasgow started getting really good weather, so the kids have been outside playing constantly, not an issue. They asked if I could let the kids use the trampoline one day, so I was like, sure, but only for a bit because I have friends coming over for some drinks. 7 p.m. comes, I ask them to go home because my 5 friends have shown up and we're going to be drinking. Cue the crying. They leave the garden upset, but hey, that's not my issue. They've been on it for 3 hours at this point. Their mom pops her head out of her bedroom window and asks if they can stay in the garden longer. No, I'm not your babysitter. She's annoyed but drops it. Last week I came home from some shopping and to my surprise, find all 4 of the kids in the garden, plus their younger cousin. I ask them to leave, tell them they can't just come into my garden without me there and they didn't even ask. They refuse to leave, so I shout up at their mom and tell her to get them out of my garden. She says, "Let them play for a bit, you don't even use it." Okay, but still, not your garden. Eventually we get into an argument and they leave. She's ticked off and shouting, saying I'm being a Karen and I should let them in. I tell her not to ask again because the answer will be no. This happened again the day after. All 4 kids, plus their cousin, waiting till I move the car from the driveway and heading straight into the garden. So I wake up this morning. I've since put a lock on the trampoline, just a small one on the mesh safety enclosure to stop them from opening it, because I'm petty. Plus, it's Saturday. I'm not working today. It's my day off. But no, neighbor decides that at 9 a.m. this morning, her kids are being fired straight out that house with breakfast bars and a bottle of water, and they head straight into the garden. So I can hear them from my window. I look out and tell them they need to leave. By the time I get downstairs, Mom has descended from her house and is trying to climb the fence between our gardens, shouting about how I used to let them use it, and she's going to call the police for the way I'm treating them. Great, you do that. I'll be sure to show them the Ring camera footage, which coincidentally also has footage of your husband picking the lock open so that your brats can use the trampoline. So, long story short, entitled mother sent her kids into my garden repeatedly even after being told not to, calls the police on me for harassment, and ends up getting her own husband arrested for theft and housebreaking and criminal damages. Edit. Some people have asked if I could sell the neighbor the trampoline. She has a V-shaped garden and the smallest one on the street. The trampoline is 12 feet and wouldn't fit. Also, I gave her a bunch of my sister's old stuff when she first moved in, but have barely interacted with her since this. Edit 2. Decided that it's not worth the hassle. 10 minutes ago, I took my trampoline and cut up the part that you jump on. Brother is coming on Tuesday to help me dismantle it, and we will take it to the local recycle center. Great ending to the story, but you're not petty at all. Your house, your garden, and your trampoline. I think I would have either taken the trampoline away or spread something really nasty all over it. Am I the jerk for taking my daughter to get her haircut when I knew it would upset my wife? Me, 29 male, and my wife, 30 female, have a daughter who's 8. We'll call her Anna. Now, Anna has very thick, blonde, and curly hair that my wife adores. Ever since she was a toddler, she had spent hours doing her hair every day, braiding it, straightening it, and styling it in all sorts of ways. Our bathroom cabinets are always filled to the brim with a bunch of hair lotions and oils and creams and other fancy products I don't even know the names of. So I think it's more than fair to say that my wife's a bit obsessed with the whole hair thing. Anna, however, has never been too fond of getting her hair done, or of anything that involves having to sit still for more than a few minutes. Before she got it cut, her hair used to reach past her waist, and while it looked lovely, she hated getting it brushed, and every morning used to be a screaming fest between her and my wife. Lately, she had been begging for a shorter haircut. My wife ignored her whenever the topic was brought up in hopes that she'd just forget about it, but none of that ended up happening. I think Anna realized she was getting nowhere with her mom because she started asking me to take her instead. I was reluctant to at first because I didn't know how my wife would react, but I agreed when I saw just how excited the kid was over something as simple as a haircut. So yesterday, I drove her to the hairdresser, where she got to flip through a lot of magazines and pick a picture of a haircut. And when she chose a really short clipper cut, I knew I was gonna be in deep crap with my wife. At that point though, there was no turning back. I mean, what could I have really done? Told her that no, she can't get the haircut she was so over the moon about, all because her mom wouldn't like it? I couldn't do that. So we went ahead with the haircut, and by the end of it, Anna couldn't stop smiling. She went around the salon showing it off to everyone, and even asked me to take a bunch of pictures even though she normally hates having pictures taken. We did get one rude comment from an older woman at the salon, something along the lines of, "You can't even tell if she's a boy or a girl now." But Anna was way too excited about her hair to notice, and if she did notice, she didn't care. When my wife got home from work that day though, things quickly took a turn for the worse. She refused to even look at Anna, locked herself in her room and cried, then got in the car and drove off. It's been a day now and she's still not back. It's honestly starting to worry me. I knew she wouldn't react well to the haircut, but I wasn't expecting her to take it this badly. The kid's upset too, and no matter how much I reassure her, she still thinks she's in trouble for getting her haircut. Am I the jerk? I realized how attached my wife was to Anna's hair, but at the end of the day, I still think it's just hair. The kid's old enough to decide these things for herself, and she was really happy with the haircut, so I don't think I did something wrong here. Not the jerk, but crying, locking herself away, and driving off are not normal responses, even for someone who is really upset. Is something else going on with your wife? Please talk to your wife and get her counseling. I was your kid, I had long, curly, thick strawberry blonde hair that reached past my waist by the time I was 5, and my mom would never let me cut it. It took hours to style, and I hated it. It gave me headaches from the weight, and it was so hot. But my mom got so much attention from my hair. People would stop her in stores and ask to feel my hair, and she would make me wait while people pet my hair and praised me for it. One summer, my grandma took me to get it cut, and it was so liberating. My mom was so upset, and as a 30-something-year-old woman, this is something that I still harbor resentment over. Thank you for seeing your kid as something other than an extension of you or a way for you to get attention. Your wife needs to do some real soul searching about why she's so attached to your kid's hair, not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. You want a man to help you? Okay, no problem. One will be clocking in soon. This happened 16 years ago. When I was about 20 years old, I was a department manager in a big box hardware store. People said I acted 25, but I didn't even look 18. I saw my fair amount of discrimination. This is the story of one such instance. I managed the paint department. I had 3 associates who worked for me. They loved me as a boss because I bought them a department radio, took the shifts they didn't want, worked Friday close and Saturday mid, so our 2 younger guys could have time off to have fun on Friday nights, and the older gentlemen took early Saturday mornings so they could sleep off their fun. In trade, I gave the older gentleman his ideal schedule. My team was awesome. One day, I was in the department alone, and a lady came up and asked me where she could find the 5-gallon oil-based primer. I let her know that my location didn't carry the 5-gallon size of that primer. She told me that we did and said that it was shelved right there, while suggesting I was too stupid to remember. Her husband gave me an apologetic look. I let her know that another location had what she was looking for, and that it was in fact in that exact location in that store. She let me know how stupid she thought I was for thinking she could mix up stores. Then she began yelling and loudly insisting that I needed to get a male associate for her because she wanted someone who was competent and not me. Her husband actually tried to step in at that point, but I just smiled and let her know that a male paint associate would be clocking in any minute and that I would be happy to direct him to her as soon as he was on the clock. I smiled and waited for Joe to clock in. Joe was great, and I knew he could handle this, or I wouldn't have put him in this situation. But Joe was also new. He was learning things super quick, but still relied on the rest of us for help. When I saw Joe walking up, I quickly said that there was a customer who needed help. I let him know that she was upset and asked him to do his best to answer her questions. Joe walked up to the lady, and she said, "Finally, a man." She asked her question, explained where the product should be, and waited. Joe calmly let her know that he had never seen us carry 5-gallon size of oil-based primer, but said he could check with the paint department manager. She was happy and loudly said she was happy to be getting some real help. Joe walked up to me and started to ask me about 5-gallon oil-based primers. The lady quickly walked up and asked him what he was doing. He turned around and said, "This is my manager. She runs this department." The husband laughed out loud, the woman stormed off, and I bought Joe lunch. You want me to shut up and follow your directions? Okie dokie. This happened around the early 2000s when I was working for my uncle's fencing company. So, customer, jerk, purchased a newly constructed home, cookie cutter, everything builder grade. The land plots were divided only by fluorescent orange marking spray paint, hardly official. My uncle submitted a bid per the customer's request, and we got the project. We had the lowest bid, around $1,200 lower than the competition. The caveat? We collect full payment up front. Not a deal breaker for customers, as we accept credit card payments. This way, both parties are protected from fraud. During that time, my uncle had just left his previous job as a land surveyor. His specialty? Property line surveying. The estimated property line, marked by the above-mentioned orange spray paint, was nearly 2 feet off of one side of customer A's property. My uncle makes the necessary adjustments and markings, and we start digging the post holes. Customer A makes a surprise job site visit/inspection. He sees our post holes and turns beet red. He rushes towards us and starts losing it on us.
What are you idiots doing? You're giving away part of my property to my neighbor. Can't you jerks see the bright orange marking on the ground? I want you geniuses to fill up these holes ASAP and dig right where the orange lines are. I want my fence directly on top of the orange lines.
I just about lost it and was about to get in his face. My uncle stops me and he tries to explain. The orange lines are off. Jerk customer.
I'm the one paying here, not you, so follow my directions.
Uncle. Please let me explain. Jerk customer.
No. I have paid you in full. You're not paid to explain, you're paid to build my fence exactly the way I want it, where I want it. This conversation is over.
He drives off, and my uncle looks at me with a malicious smile. OP, let's grab an early lunch, and then we'll give him what he wants. I shrug. Over lunch, he calls my aunt, his secretary, to have her draft a new work order, contract. In it, it's explicitly and officially noted that the fence will be put up 22 inches east of the official property line, and that the customer will shoulder full responsibility and liability should a conflict arise either with their future new neighbor, the home next door was still unsold at that point, or any other party. Aunt emails the contract to customer A. My uncle and I have our 2-martini lunch hour. Aunt calls and says customer A has signed and emailed the new contract back to her. And now that we have a paper trail, we go back to the site and continue working. That same afternoon, customer A pays us another visit and says,
Just checking to see if you decided to follow my instructions. You idiots didn't wait for me to sign the new contract before resuming work, did you?
Me. We sure did. As he turned around to leave, I can hear him mouth something off.
Idiots.
Upon completion, 3 days later, he signs off that the work was satisfactory. He was still in jerk mode, refusing to acknowledge either my uncle or I when we thanked him for his business. 4 months later, he contacts my uncle again, requesting for him to bid on a new project. Yep, you guessed it, to move the existing fence on top of the official property line. We gave him an unreasonably high bid and still secured the project. This time around, he was a teddy bear throughout the entire project. Am I the jerk for explaining how to split rent? I know I'm right, but I need someone to tell me that I'm right, because it's really hard for me to believe that anyone would have a problem with this. My wife and I have no kids and we both work. I make about twice what she does now, but previously she was being paid less, so I was making more than twice her. We keep our finances separate. Because it's just us two, our household expenses are low, and I out-earned my wife significantly, so I told her she can pick up the tab on going out to restaurants and stuff here and there, and I'll cover all the rent and household expenses. Hence, we never really needed to exchange money. However, since my wife got a raise, we've decided to move to a little fancier, more expensive place, and I asked her if she would be willing to split rent and household expenses 2-to-1 with me. She said sure. We signed a 12-month lease, and I told her I'll pay rent for 2 months and she'll pay every third month, and that'll be a 2-1 split. That's where the trouble began. She wants to transfer 1/3 rent every month to me. I don't have a problem with this in principle, but I wanted to know why she wanted to do a transfer every month when it was just simpler for her to pay every 3 months. That's 4 payments instead of 12. She told me, and I'm still in disbelief, that she'd pay more that way because she'd be paying the full rent. I told her no, because she's paying it every 3 months. She simply did not believe me. I asked her if her account would go overdraft or some other balance issue, and if it would make her pay a fee. She said no. So I grabbed Monopoly money and said, our rent is $3. I will pay $2 every month from my stack, and you pay $1. Then I will pay for 2 months total, and you pay for 1 month. We'll count how much we each paid in the end. Finally, she understood. And then she got mad at me for mansplaining basic math with Monopoly money. I nearly choked and told her explaining 3rd grade math to an adult is not mansplaining. It's a failure of our educational system. She's still mad at me. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This is not mansplaining, but you do sound a little condescending. By the way, why is it simpler for her to pay the rent for you both every 3 months rather than auto-pay from one account every month and auto-transfer her share to you every month? Her approach seems simpler and less likely to lead to missed payments. I mean, in principle, you're not wrong, but you're the jerk for wanting to split rent in an obnoxious way. Her way is better. You're the jerk. You weren't wrong in your logic, but you failed in the human/relational aspect of this. Everyone will have a moment of being a jerk, especially within a relationship. Your wife had a dumb moment, and clearly she was embarrassed and her feelings were hurt in your obnoxious indignation of her terrible math. Why couldn't you simply say, I'm sorry, honey, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, I just wanted you to understand me. You quadrupling down on something so stupid makes me believe that this is how you act and respond to any of her goofs. Everyone has dumb moments, especially within relationships. It wouldn't hurt you to have patience and compassion for your wife. Life is hard enough. No one wants to come home to an overly emotional, condescending jerk every day. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Sometimes it's not about what we're saying, but more so how we're saying it. If you love someone, speak to them in a loving way and you'll never go wrong. Am I the jerk for refusing to babysit the golden child's baby after he disowned me for being adopted? I, 20, femme, was adopted when I was 16 by my half-brother and his wife, who were in their late 30s at the time. They already had 6 kids when they adopted me, but it was never an issue. They have treated me like their own kid since they met me and later adopted me. So did all their other kids. Except for one, their golden child, who is only 4 months older than me. We will call him Chad. Chad has always been an insensitive jerk to literally everyone, including our other siblings. He would literally fight with our sister, say horrible and mean things to everyone, and get away with it. He also had extreme anger issues that would result in broken doors, holes in the walls, etc. He also got to do everything me and my sister were never able to do. Got a free car, go out at night, etc. When we were still in school together during high school, he got up in front of our whole class one year and told everyone I wasn't his sister and I never would be. He then told me in front of his friends that I would never be a part of his family and I should just get over it, and walked off. This was not a one-and-done type thing. He would keep doing this up until he moved out and I stopped seeing and talking to him. Golden Boy once again got the limelight of the family after he got married right after high school, moved out to his wife's family's house, and then had a baby, the first grandbaby. Since this has happened, I have stayed as far away from him as possible, only seeing him for family pictures every year because our mother asks. Recently, I decided to come forward to our mom about what he said and did because she was upset about how I was distancing myself from him. She basically pulled the "that's still my kid and it's my first grandbaby" card as the reason she wasn't going to be upset over it. I didn't really care, to be honest. I knew it wasn't going to change her mind on her kid anyway. Out of nowhere, I got a message begging me to come babysit for them because you're the only one who can deal with these kinds of babies because no one will help. Apparently, their baby is extremely clingy, and the fact that the mom is a germ phobia who has basically isolated this kid since birth, it literally has only been held by like 6 people since it's been born. They know I don't sleep for the most part because I'm an insomniac with ADHD, and I also am not bothered by crying. For some reason, I can sit for hours with the baby crying and it doesn't bother me. Can't tell if that's a blessing or a curse at this point. My sister is mad at me because apparently they haven't asked anyone else in the family for help but me, and everyone wants to go see this baby. Am I the jerk for not wanting to be around or take care of the baby because its father said I'm not part of his family? Update: Chad had burned the bridge for the last time. After I posted, I ended up talking to 2 of my friends from high school. They were actually there during multiple occasions when Chad publicly said all that stuff. I talked with them for a little while. One of those friends actually came over almost weekly when I was still living at my parents' home, so she firsthand understands my family. We talked and we all mutually agreed. I go this once, see if we can't mend things. If not, I can tell my mom and sister I tried and we are done with the whole thing. And if the whole negative thing with my family keeps up, I will cut them off for good. So I accepted to go babysit. I went over to Chad's house at around 8 p.m. As soon as I showed up, I was greeted by Chad's wife, who was extremely happy to see me. She was tired. You could just tell she had the "I have a 1-year-old" face going on. She talked to me for a few minutes about how happy she was I came over and how she was so glad to be going out with Chad. I kinda just listened to her go on and on before she finally got to the baby. Let's call him Seth. She explained to me his nightly routine, feedings, etc. Nothing too big. Then she got to the end where she started going on about how he was having crying fits at night and how he wouldn't get to sleep until mid-morning. I was a little on that, but all babies have different routines, I guess. She then said they would only be gone about 4 hours and that they would be home around like 12:30, 1 at most. After this, Chad shows up from their room, literally starts talking to his wife, looks at me, and then just kinda looks me over for a minute and gives me a small wave and nod before heading out of the house. His wife follows and simply tells me to call or text if I need anything. For a minute, I was just stunned, but went to work to see Seth. which was odd because it was my first time seeing him in person and not in the photos that are hung around our parents' house. In person, he's the cutest little baby ever. He was fine the whole time, and he only cried because there was no one in the room. By this time, it was around 11:30, almost 12. I would check the clock every few minutes just to see what time it was. 12:30 rolled around, and I'm like, should I text them? And I'm like, no, let me give them another few minutes until I need to text them. I ended up texting both of them at 1, asking where they were, because they did say that they would be home by now. I got no reply from either of them. They finally show up at 3 in the morning. I'm livid at this point, not even over having to take care of Seth for a longer period of time, but just because they never texted me back. Like, what if there was an emergency or something? They walk into the living room, and I'm just like, I texted asking where y'all were, and no one answered. And Chad's wife starts saying that, oh, Chad said it was fine, and that it would only be an hour more. And I was like, you know what, it's fine, whatever, Seth is sleeping. She looks at me all weird, and I rolled my eyes and say, he cries at night because he gets lonely, he's clingy. Just let him know that you're in the room when he starts crying, and he will go right back to sleep. I started to walk out with my stuff, as I was right about to walk completely past Chad when I turned around and was like, so you aren't going to say anything to me? After I looked after your kid for like 7 hours now? He snorted at me and was like, no, my wife is the one who talked me into this anyway. Upset at this point, I said, so this wasn't, I don't know, possibly a way to be able to apologize for high school? Or maybe all those other times you decided to outcast me from the family? Because I was under the impression that maybe you wanted to patch things up because of you asking me of all people to watch your kid. He sat there for a minute and just said, why should I apologize? Because literally nothing from high school has changed. Man, you really do need to grow up and understand that me and my wife aren't going to cater to you like mom and dad did because you're adopted. You ain't our family, and you won't ever be. At this point, I just got in my car and left. I ended up texting my mom about all of it, thinking she would get it in the morning when she woke up. No, of course she had to be awake. She apparently told Chad's wife about the conversation we had about all the stuff Chad had said and done to me in school. Apparently, his wife felt bad because she had an adopted sister too, and felt horrible that Chad had done and said all those things. Apparently, mom didn't know about Chad asking about the babysitting thing until now, and she started talking to the wife, who is now upset. Apparently, she thought Chad would have changed since then, and didn't think he would act the way he did when I left. I told my mom that I'm done with him, and that if something ever happened with Seth, then I would be there, but I was done with them until that happens. Way things are going, I will most likely be cutting my whole family off because this isn't worth the stress anymore. Not the jerk. I would send them your hourly rates you would charge for the work. When Chad tries to pull the family card, say clearly that he has always publicly announced that you are not his sister and never will be, so you are only keeping Chad's word. Not the jerk at all. Stand your ground. You do not owe Chad anything. He took action, now he has to face the consequences. Just keep repeating. He said that I was not a part of his family and never would be. Therefore, I owe him nothing. This is not open for discussion. My decision is final. I say this gently, but your adopted parents aren't as great as you think they are. Treating your kids differently, showering gifts and praise on 1 out of 7 kids, and allowing one to be a jerk to the rest is horrible. And I'm sorry they knew way better before you sat your mom down and told her. She has always known and looked the other way. My wife wants to pay off her student loan debt with the $20,000 I have saved in a bank account for our future kids. I had some money saved before I even met her. I think around that time it was $3,000. I'll get to the reason I was saving later. I had originally planned to tell her when we started dating because I was head over heels, but my dad told me otherwise. Said it was a bad idea to reveal a large amount of money in a barely formed relationship. So I listened and kept my mouth shut. So here we are 8 years later. Married, but no kids, and living in a decent-sized apartment. I decided it was time to let her know. Not out of the blue, but it had been on my mind lately. She was ecstatic. She said how much of a genius I was, and that this money would help pay off her student loan debt, and we could vacation, she could quit her job, etc. I kinda gave her a look and said I didn't plan to have the money used yet. We weren't struggling by any means, and I'd rather not be the sole breadwinner. She got upset and asked why I would tell her this if I wasn't planning to use it. I told her because she's my wife, and after 8 years, I hoped she wouldn't act like that. I wanted the money used for our kids' education and life, because I struggled growing up and wanted to ensure it wasn't like that for them, like a boost in life. She got even more livid and said she didn't even want kids if all that money was going to them. I said fine and that I donated instead. She got so angry that she slammed the bedroom door in my face, screaming on the other side. I screamed back, not understanding why she was being this way. She said that I could pay her student loans, but instead I was being selfish for kids we don't even have. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen. Am I the jerk? Edit. It's not that she thought we could do all of those things she mentioned. She was suggesting stuff. I might have worded it badly. Quit her job on $20,000? Does she have no concept of money? Not the jerk. But consider separate finances if she decides to not stop carrying on this mistreatment. She seems incredibly financially irresponsible. How can she quit her job because you have $20,000? Where do you live where $20,000 is any type of real money? Customer tried paying with fake money, expected me to serve him. Hi, I'm 17, female, and I work at Michael's, the craft store. This happened the other week. I was on my lunch break shopping as a normal customer. No uniform or identification that says I work there. And this man comes running up to me asking me if I work here. I told him yes, but technically not right now since I'm on my lunch and I'm not being paid. He proceeds to ignore my entire sentence and grab me by the arm. This guy was probably in his early 30s, and as I stated before, I'm 17 and I'm small. As he drags me to the register, he's saying, "Your cashier needs help, and I've been waiting for my change for 5 minutes now." I ask him to please remove his hand from me before I drop the candles I was holding, and to his benefit, he did. We make it up to the front, and there's a long line with one cashier working. I proceed to just page on the PA system for backup and go back to my lunch break. Next thing I know, the man's friend is coming up to me and also trying to grab me by the arm to drag me to the registers. I exclaim, "What is with you and your friend and your need to put your hands on me? Now please remove them before I get someone to escort you out." My manager then approached me and asked if I could hop on register for just a couple minutes and I'll get an extra 5 for my lunch. Annoyed, I do what she asks and hop on a register and start ringing up the guy who had grabbed me. He had a $3,000 basket of sewing lights and Visa gift cards and pulled out a wad of cash. So I took the cash from him and it definitely didn't feel right. So I put them through our bill readers and marked them with the counterfeit marker, and both showed up as fake bills. I proceeded to hand back all the money he gave me and told him that he needs to leave the store and that he's not welcome back, and I will be informing my manager and they will decide whether a police report needs to be filed. The guy fast walks out the door, and I tell my manager everything and tell them I'll be needing 15 minutes more lunchtime since this guy took up 18 minutes of my time and wasted them. I didn't get the extra lunchtime. Side note, I know that this is for people who don't work at the store the confrontation happened in, but technically, on unpaid time, I do not work there and shouldn't be obligated to help. Am I the jerk for insisting my sister gets a prenuptial agreement? My sister and I are property investors who own 6 investment properties together. I know how the internet feels about evil landlords, so spare me that please, that's not why I'm here. We started with one house to live in, then bought lots of cheap houses and flipped them for rental income. We're doing well financially because of said houses. My sister is getting married. Wedding is later this year, hopefully. I'm helping her plan, and we were going through a to-do list, seeing what's left to be done. She mentioned caterers, venues, invites, etc., and asked if she'd forgotten anything. I said, yes, prenup, and we both sang, "We want prenup, yeah," like the Kanye song, then laughed. She moved on to the next item without actually addressing it. I leave it for then, and we go our separate ways. I text her later in the evening and say, "Hey, my friend used a really good lawyer to draw her prenup, so let me know if you want me to ask her for her deeds." She replies she thought I was joking. She's not asking her husband to sign a prenup. I reply I wasn't joking and I must insist he signs one. She calls and says it's not my place to insist. I say it is when our assets are tied together. She asks me if I'm trying to say something about her future husband. I say I'm trying to be realistic and smart. Then it all goes to heck. She starts yelling at me about being rude, jinxing her marriage before it began, yada yada yada. I say either she gets a prenup or we transfer all property to my name and I get one if I ever get married, then I hang up. Been bombarded by family saying her future husband is a good guy who would never do that if they separated. He sent me a text admonishing me for hurting my sister and calling him a gold digger. He thought I liked him. I'm not backing down on this one. Am I the jerk for how I went about it or wanting one? New neighbors have 9 people crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment and are extremely loud all of the time. I've lived in my apartment for almost 2 years, and my experience has been unproblematic so far. I live in the second to last unit, and our old neighbors in the last unit moved out about 2 months ago. We got new neighbors in that unit 3 days ago. For those 3 days, it's been rough. There are at least 5 kids and 4 adults living in the unit. The kids and adults yell almost constantly. Kids are loud, but that doesn't even bother me the most because it can be tuned out. What's bothering me is that the adults have had at least 2 extra vehicles in the parking area. Each unit gets 2 spaces, unassigned, and my partner and I utilize both of ours. And they play loud music for hours while smoking and drinking in their running cars. In the day, they do the same, and the kids run around all the parked vehicles. It's painful to see the alerts on my doorbell cam when the kids are playing around the vehicles, because I bought a new vehicle just last week, so I'm still in the phase where I'm hyper aware of making sure it's taken care of cosmetically and mechanically. On day 2 of new neighbors, one of the kids set my car alarm off somehow. I still can't figure it out, but a scooter was involved. My dilemma is, what do I do? I've already asked one of the adults nicely if they could maybe avoid the kids playing tag with vehicles, but shortly after is when my alarm went off. I don't want to complain to management because the neighbors would obviously know it was me, as I'm the only next door neighbor aside from the building across from us. Maybe I'm being dramatic or paranoid, I don't know, man. I really feel like a Karen, but this crap is stressful for me considering I haven't had to worry about this crap since I've moved in. I doubt the management rented to 9 people. Let them know. I agree. In my 2-bedroom place, they only allow a maximum of 5 people, 2 people per bedroom and a 5th person in the living or dining area. They know some people convert the dining room into a 3rd bedroom, so they allow it. But 9 people? Highly doubtful. If your layout is the same as your neighbors, your lease will be about the same. You can check your lease for rules on maximum occupancy for your unit and hope that their lease is the same. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you report your neighbors to management or not? Please let us know. 9 people in a little apartment? Sounds to me like some of them should be getting jobs instead of hanging out in their cars all day doing God knows what. Am I the jerk for wanting my husband to include our daughters more instead of just our son? I have 3 kids, 2 twin girls who are 8 and 1 son who's 5. My husband had always preferred having a son, but he remained neutral when our first 2 were daughters. Don't get me wrong, he loves our daughters, but somehow he has this poor misunderstanding that they would not be able to enjoy the things that he likes and leaves it to me to bring them out or engage them. Before, he at least used to involve them in fishing or soccer and his other hobbies, but after my son was born, my husband completely stopped engaging my daughters in his hobbies and only involves our son. He leaves the bulk of it to me because they have more in common with me. I involve all 3 of my kids equally in whatever I do, be it sports or gardening or even teaching them coding. I'm in tech. It's quite disheartening to see the indifference, and I'm worried that they will catch on to the idea that they are lesser than. I have communicated multiple times and suggested that when he takes our son out to fish or do sports, he brings our daughters too so that they can learn. But he says he prefers one-on-one bonding sessions with our son and he can't change his parenting style. Our daughters are athletically inclined as well. I used to be in competitive tennis for most of my schooling years, and I train both of them and my son every Saturday or Friday, depending on my free time. Last Saturday, there was a community football game which was set up as part of a charity with a mini carnival. I was shocked to find out that my husband bought only 2 tickets for him and our son, even though there were plenty available for our daughters to join. Even if he believed they wouldn't have enjoyed the game, they could have participated in the carnival. In that anger, I bought 3 tickets last minute and brought our daughters along as well, but sat separate and enjoyed the carnival and game by our own means. Ironically enough, my husband thought I was being condescending by doing that, even though I was giving him a taste of his own medicine. I might be the jerk for reacting like that, but after multiple failed avenues for communication, I decided to resort to underhand pettiness. He also told me after that it is not that he doesn't care for our daughters, but just that he does not have anything in common with them, which boils my blood. Even if, as I said, both our daughters are very inclined in sports and love spending time with their father. Edit. I appreciate the advice and expertise received. I do plan to show this post to my husband. Maybe a multitude of perspectives could do him some good. I have suggested couples counseling before, which my husband was not interested in, as mentioned in the thread below. Regardless, I will try again to convince him, perhaps to get personal therapy too, so that he can work through any issues he might have. After reading through the judgments, I do agree that he might have some biases and misconceptions that he needs to change before it severs the relationship he has with them. I love all my kids equally and want them to have a wonderful relationship with their dad, as I did with mine. I know he can make a change if he tries. Thanks once again. Couples counseling. That's what you two need. He's never going to hear it from your mouth. Your husband is being a jerk to the girls and raising a spoiled, special, entitled son in the process. He will ruin all 3 kids with this crap. Not the jerk. OP. I have suggested this idea on more than one occasion. He says he does not wish to partake in it and that it is embarrassing to him and that it would make him look like a bad parent, even though I reassured him that he's not, and that they will only help us through fixing some of his misconceptions about our daughters. He sure sounds like a bad parent to me. Stop reassuring him that he's not a bad parent. He is, and you know it. I feel so sorry for you and your daughters to be with a jerk like him. He is a bad parent. My dad played a lot with me. We played with Legos, we built things, I helped him fix stuff around the house. Your husband is reinforcing an outdated social construct. It just makes me angry for you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for correcting my ex-husband's new wife when she made assumptions about why our marriage failed? I'm 48, female, and was married to my ex, Jim, who's 49, for 20 years. We have 3 kids who are 22, 20, and 18, and have been divorced for 5 years. Both of us are now remarried, but we maintain a good relationship for our kids and because we do like each other. We divorced because Jim was a bad husband and not a great dad when we were together. Jim worked long hours to build a wonderful career while I had to neglect my career to be there for our kids. He didn't truly understand until it was too late. He provided for us and still does provide for our kids. I'm grateful for everything he did, but admit that I resented him during our marriage because I had to watch his career take off while mine, the same career, stalled. For a little more context, I married a mutual friend, David, who's 50, of Jim, and me. We were both divorced, no cheating was involved, and my ex have never had an issue with it because he knows that we didn't cheat. We both had a conversation with him at the start of our relationship, and he was actually happy for us. 4 years ago, Jim met Kara, who's 34, and they got married 2 years later. It's her first marriage, and they had their first baby last year. As I mentioned, Jim and I have a great relationship that includes monthly dinner with our kids and just us. We've been doing this since we separated 6 years ago, so our kids understand that we are still a family, and it allows our kids an opportunity to share things with their parents and siblings without anyone else. The issue came up on Easter, and I'm not sure if I'm the jerk or justified. We were all at former mother-in-law's house for the holiday, and Kara was going on and on about what a wonderful husband and father Jim is to her and their daughter. I don't care, because I know my ex has more time now than he did when our kids were younger. I didn't really say anything until Kara looked directly at me and asked in front of the entire family why I ever gave Jim up. She also made a comment about me being too busy falling in love with my husband's best friend. I simply looked back at her and said, "You know, Kara, he wasn't always a great husband and is only so wonderful now because I was willing to make a ton of sacrifices so he could have a successful career. But don't worry, you are very welcome for that." Almost everyone laughed, including Jim, but Kara was upset and texted me later that night to tell me how hurt she was that I insulted her and her husband at Easter dinner and said I shouldn't have even been there. I ignored her text at first, but she called the next day to continue the conversation. The conversation eventually turned to me explaining that my marriage to Jim and her marriage are very different, and while I am happy that they are happy and have a great life, she doesn't get to rewrite history or comment on the type of husband Jim was to me. I reminded her that Jim and I have spent many years working through our crap, and while she may think she's funny, she just comes off as insecure. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It was pretty audacious of her to assume the demise of your relationship with your ex was entirely on your shoulders, not to mention very insulting to accuse you of cheating. She needs to grow up and take responsibility for her words, especially as a mom. OP. Thanks. Her comment about my husband was very odd considering we did not live in the same city when my ex and I split, and she knows that. Also, your ex-husband knows, or that's the way it came off, that he was a crappy husband and father. He even laughed at what you said. He's changed, good for him, but that doesn't negate the past, And for someone who wasn't involved, his new wife sure thinks she knows a ton. Not the jerk. She can dish it out, but not take it. This was absolutely none of her business. She had no right to make this comment at that dinner, nor to follow up with a text or a call. She's 34 going on 12. Yes, she is insecure. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or husband's new wife? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for getting mad at my mom for making my girlfriend sleep on the floor? My girlfriend, Rose, and I have been together for 4 years, and she's 5 months pregnant with our first kid. My mom seemed to really like Rose, or at the very least tolerated her. But after we announced that we were expecting, something definitely switched in her. She's become extremely rude and disrespectful towards my girlfriend. She makes passive-aggressive comments at every chance she gets. I've had to take a step back from my mother until she fixes her behavior. Rose had gone to visit her family, who live far out of town. It was a very last-minute trip, and she drove herself to the destination and back. Unfortunately, at around 6 p.m., her car broke down, and she was forced to pull over. Fortunately, my brother, Chris, who's great with cars and lives about an hour and a half from where Rose was stranded, was willing to pick her up and sorted everything out. I was out of the country, so I'm grateful that my brother sorted everything out for her. Chris moved back in with my mom about a year ago. Obviously, the situation wasn't the best, especially considering the tension between Rose and my mom that exists for no particular reason. But I hoped my mom could put her pettiness aside for at least a night. It was too late for Chris to drive Rose back home, so my brother told her that he would drive her back tomorrow morning. An arrangement that my mom seems to not like, but one that she managed to keep her mouth shut about, my girlfriend tells me. Rose helps prepare dinner, wash up, and actually engage in a decent conversation with my mom for the first time in ages. However, they mostly avoid each other. Chris goes to bed earlier, leaving my mom and Rose. My mom lives in a 2-bedroom apartment, and since both bedrooms were taken, Rose assumed that she would be sleeping on the couch. She apparently assumed wrong. My mom gives Rose the thinnest blanket ever and basically screams at her, telling her that she has to sleep on the floor to not ruin the couch. She tells Rose to make do with the pillows on the couch and the blanket that provide zero warmth. Rose thought about protesting, but ultimately decided against it. According to Rose, my mom kept opening her door to check if she was sleeping on the couch, so she couldn't even try to sleep on the couch. At 5 a.m., Chris found Rose on the couch and let her sleep in his bed. He ended up telling me, but told me to not make a big fuss about it. I did the exact opposite. I called my mom, very angry, and told her that she was disrespecting her so badly. She tried to defend herself by saying that she didn't do anything wrong, but I refused to hear any of it. Chris agrees with me, but told me that I shouldn't make it a fight. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Listen closely. Your mom is feeling threatened because there's another woman about to become a mom in the family. This feels like her role is being taken away and will lead to worse behavior. You have to have a zero-tolerance policy for this. Sit your mom down and tell her that she will always be your mom. Also tell her that if she continues to treat your girlfriend this way, it will damage her relationship with you, so she needs to knock it off. Good luck, OP, and be firm in your boundaries. Lost in IKEA. I guess I'm your guide. I had been going to my local IKEA to pick up bookcases, bedside tables, and whatever else I needed for my new apartment. It's about half an hour away, so I've been going after work, still dressed up in work clothes. My job is an office situation, and I wear a shirt and tie, so I guess I can't blame the confused-looking old-timer who accosted me in the as-is section. Old-timer. Do you work here? Me. Nah, I just dress up. We share a laugh, and he looks disappointed and lost. I guess years of retail work have broken me in, because I then continued. Me. I can try to help if you like. What's up? The old man looks thankful as he pleads. Old-timer. How the heck do you get out of here? I'm not sure why, but in my absurd mind, I like to imagine that old-timer might have been a young man when he first entered the store, and that he had been subsisting on meatballs and sleeping on display sofas as he wandered endlessly. He was so close to the exit, of course I had to help him escape this Swedish purgatory. Me. Oh yeah, I can help. Follow me. I politely walked him to the exit. He thanked me and was on his way into a world much different than the one he knew when he first ventured into IKEA. Sadly, they did not have the Billy bookcase I wanted, so I got the Kallax ones. But at least I did a good deed and used my weird middle management vibes for good, and not for evil. If you're out there, old-timer, I wish you well. Not as an employee, but just as a helpful human. Am I the jerk for not being grateful to my parents? I don't have a great relationship with my parents. Growing up, they were very cheap and often saved money to the detriment of my health. I needed fillings as a teenager and they didn't want to pay for it, so they just told me to brush my teeth more. The cavities became infected. I was crying and begging my parents before they got me to a dentist and I needed a root canal. Even then, they waited a week before they found a dentist that gave them a discount because the original dentist was more expensive, in which time I was screaming and crying because I couldn't bear it anymore. I also didn't get glasses until I started working. I had good grades, but I could barely see and had to be right in front of the whiteboard. I told my parents, but they didn't want to pay for glasses, so I was bullied really badly, but they told me to just ignore it and study. They didn't want to spend the money for me to dress nicely, so I wore 1 or 2 outfits I had and was bullied badly for it. I was so depressed, but they didn't care, just kept telling me to study and do my chores. They never talked to me apart from telling me my grades weren't good enough and to do my chores. Even when my grandma passed, I wasn't allowed to the funeral because I would have missed school. We weren't poor. We owned our own home and had 2 cars that were pretty nice, but my parents never wanted to spend money unless it was for things they could brag about. I finished college this year with $58,000 of student loans, and my parents presented me with the full payment, saying they had been saving it for years. It was the only time in my life they told me, "Good job." I know I should be grateful, but the tooth pain and not being able to see for years and missing grandma's funeral just so they could pay off my student loans made me mad knowing that they had money. They were so proud they saved up the money, but I was not happy telling them I didn't want it. I already have a job that pays $90,000 out of college, so I can easily pay it off myself, and I don't want them to think the ways they saved money were okay. They were calling me ungrateful for not being happy I don't have student loans, but I would have preferred having student loans over having to live like we were in poverty. Not the jerk. Take their money and don't look back. They'll never admit that they're psychopaths, so don't waste your breath. Surround yourself with positive, emotionally healthy people and move on from these non-parents. They hardly qualify as a mom or dad. Was handed my first allergy cards. It's a 6-top family. They had a reservation, so this was a pre-planned outing. I do my greeting and they hand me these cards. Life-threatening allergies: soy, peanuts, tree nuts, shellfish, dairy, eggs, gluten, barley, oats, peas, probably 3 more things I'm forgetting. Keep in mind this is 7:30 p.m. on Easter Sunday, and they didn't think to make any prior arrangements. They just showed up and handed me these cards. They're interested in the mussels. I check, and the sauce has dairy. We cannot substitute. Well, maybe we could with some notice, or if it wasn't Easter dinner time at a restaurant. Or how about the carne pizza with gluten-free crust for an appetizer? Awesome, only 5 ingredients for me to track down. I'll be right back. Except table 93 just got set, since under normal circumstances, this 6-top would have drinks and orders in by now. I greet 93, grab their drinks, and see that 602 is done eating. I clear their plates, print their check, and then go try to find the box of frozen gluten-free pizza crusts so I can read the ingredients. May contain egg. Oof. I head back to the table to let them know. Oh, that's okay, as long as it doesn't have eggs in it. Now my spidey sense is tingling. That's not how life-threatening allergies work. Contamination is a huge issue, and the "may contain" warning on the label is for exactly these circumstances. Oh well, now I have to look for the packaging on the pepperoni and the sausage. But first, 93 needs to order and needs bread, and 602 has their credit card in the book and has popped it up for me to see, and table 92 just got set. I take care of all of them and then start digging in the coolers for meat packaging. 10 minutes of digging, and I'm pretty sure the packaging is all gone. I can't find any ingredients at all. I head back to let them know. They've now been sitting for 45 minutes, ordered only water. I pass 92 off to someone else and tell the hostess to leave me alone until this nightmare table is gone. Sorry guys, I cannot confirm a single ingredient in the pepperoni or sausage. Oh, that's okay, we'll be fine. You can put that in. What? At this point, I'm sort of done with this charade and giving them options, so I say, as far as entrees go, I happen to be allergic to soy myself, and I can tell you there's one thing I can eat here, the bolognese with no cream added. They all just looked at me and one by one said that would be fine. They tipped $50 on 200, so there's that. Our host wasn't in yet one morning, so I answered the phone. The very nice and polite lady explained that they had a dinner reservation that day and she had a garlic allergy. She didn't want to hold up the rest of her group, so she was calling about some options she had seen on our menu. She was interested in the grilled chicken, but it was marinated. She asked if there was a way to get an unmarinated grilled chicken for dinner. Because she called that morning, I was able to let the chef know. He made sure to have a plain chicken breast ready for her for dinner. It was so nice that she was so thoughtful. I don't do anything right? Fine, I'll do it your way. I used to work for a private company which was owned by a wealthy woman who could afford to have her dim-witted, stubborn, and mean daughter run one of the departments. It didn't go well, but it was a small department, and the mother was more interested in keeping her daughter happy than in making profit. Thankfully, the daughter, Em, usually only worked a few hours each morning to help me out, and then she would leave. I'm all for inclusion and encouraging people to learn new things, but Em was not fit for management and definitely didn't have the faculties for accounting. She would help me, and I would wait for her to leave so I could fix it, writing legible notes, sending notices, giving customers change and receipts, posting past due notices, etc. This went on for 3 years until I found a better job and gave 2 weeks' notice. Em was livid. She felt like it was a betrayal. Em started staying all day to do any bookkeeping. She started talking to coworker and customer alike, telling them I don't know how to do my job. I do everything wrong, and it's all my fault we weren't a better department. She would do this in front of my face too, pulling someone aside to talk in stage whispers. I can't do anything right? If you say so, I'll stop doing things my way and only do what you explicitly ask for. I won't take the fullest usage from a payment, but instead give change like they're buying 1 unit. I won't transcribe her atrocious handwriting. I won't give past due notices. I won't maintain the customer balance spreadsheets. By the end of my last 2 weeks, they had switched from using Excel to using a spiral notebook to log customer payments, gave away the laptop with the old notes and customer contact sheet, and forgave any outstanding balances because Em insisted my notes were wrong, meaning they lost a couple $1,000 and clients would have no way to contact them unless they came in person since our department didn't have a designated phone number. But remember, I never do anything right. She was condition setting. See, you were supposed to stay forever to do the work and for whatever pay you were getting so that she could work a few hours and go play with her friends and pretend that she had a real job. When she realized you were quitting, she realized she'd be done for because she was supposed to be learning all the time you were there, but went to play instead. So she started doing this so anything that went wrong after you left would be your fault and not hers. This is an unfortunate commonplace business practice. HOA neighbor keeps harassing me. Finally gets a taste of her own medicine. I bought my first house in 1999 and I wanted DirecTV. I put up a satellite dish, which happened to be behind a privacy fence. I also knew the FCC ruling that HOAs couldn't prevent you from putting up a dish due to some issue with home builders who would make shady deals with cable companies to force homeowners to go with a specific company. I figured I wouldn't have any issues since it was behind a fence anyway. I got a knock at my door the next day, and it was my neighbor from across the cul-de-sac, telling me she's on the board of the HOA. Your dish is in violation and must be removed. This was my first encounter with her. I politely explained the law as I knew it and told her to have a nice day. We didn't speak again, and she ended up moving out soon. Well, it turns out she didn't move out and was just renting to some other lady that I never spoke to, and the HOA lady moved back a year later. There was an easement behind my house, which was properly mowed when I moved in. I would hit golf balls down there with my wedge, and my neighbor was into archery and used it as his range. By the second summer I lived there, it was overgrown and an eyesore. I couldn't even see the creek just behind my house anymore. One weekend, I borrowed my dad's utility trailer, and I spent 3 days clearing out our little section behind the houses, hauling all of the debris away, probably 2 trips a day. My arms were covered in cuts from the briars, and apparently I was also dealing with sumac, poison ivy, and some other stuff because by Monday I was having an allergic reaction so badly that I went to the doctor to get a shot. Laid up in the house all day, and I got a knock at the door. It's the neighbor again. Apparently there's a rule that you cannot store a trailer in the driveway for more than 3 days, and this was day 4. I needed to remove it by the end of the day or face a $500 fine. She handed me a paper listing the rule, and I considered just paying the fine, but instead, I angrily drove an hour each way to return my dad's trailer after spending half the day already waiting in a hospital lobby. I got home after dark. What struck me as odd was that there was a list of things you couldn't store in your driveway: personal watercraft, boats, trailers, etc. The odd part was that motorcycle was listed on there. I don't ride one myself, but I thought it was a totally reasonable thing to keep in a driveway. After I finished all of this work, this woman would routinely walk through my yard without asking, But since she was taking her grandkid to play in the creek, I never said anything, even though it bothered me she never asked. A year or so later, I wanted to sell the house and move into something bigger. I had talked to a realtor already, and I was getting things tidied up to have the house shown. As I was cleaning out a drawer, I noticed that paper the HOA lady had given me, and I remembered the part about motorcycles being listed. You see, the HOA lady had started dating an older gentleman, and he had moved in with her. Turns out he rode a Harley, which was always parked in her driveway. She was home, so I walked over there and politely informed her about the violation. The next day, the motorcycle was parked on her back porch, the one she bragged about to everyone who would listen, so she could tell them how much it cost. I laughed to myself, but then I remembered the part about it needing to be behind a fence. Another knock at the door, and within a few days, a fence company was building a 6-foot privacy fence which completely hid her fancy new deck. My realtor had been on my case for at least a week about needing to put up a for sale sign, so as soon as the fence was finished, I told her it was okay. I sold the house quickly and moved out at the end of the month. Oh, and by the way, the fence was completely hideous and looked out of place because of the way her lot was shaped. Am I the jerk for saying no to my boss after she asked me to watch her kids this weekend? So I'm 22, female, and my sister is getting married this coming weekend, and I will be gone Thursday through Sunday. I've had this known that I was going to be gone for 7 months. 7 months. I would even remind every month or so, just so I knew that she knew. I nanny 2 amazing kids who are 6 and 8. This is the first time I have ever asked to have some time off. My boss has always been like, "Oh yeah, sure, sounds like a beautiful wedding." However, I got a text 2 hours ago saying she really needed me this weekend and she couldn't find anyone else. I was upset, but I know how to act calm since, it's my job to stay happy and calm. I texted her back a quick apology, but said I really didn't want to miss my sister's wedding as she's my only sibling. Well, boss woman went off the deep end and said that if I didn't show up to watch her kids this weekend, that I won't have a job come Monday. I replied with this exactly. Look, I'm so sorry that you're having a hard time looking for someone to cover. I can reach out to a few nanny friends I have and see if any of them would like to pick this up. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment for my sister, and if it means I will lose my job, then sadly I will have to accept that. I love this job and your kids, and I hope we can work something out. I think it would devastate them. But you do what you need to, and I will accept that. She threw a few insults at me and said I'm abandoning them. I don't know what to do. I don't want to get a new job because I work so well with these 2 kiddos. My mom told me I was a jerk for so quickly accepting that I might get fired and told me that work just sucks sometimes and you gotta suck it up. Mom says I should have been an adult and just missed my sister's wedding. I don't know, should I? Am I really that big of a jerk for saying no? Edit, just to clarify, me and my mom don't have a good relationship. I didn't ask her for her advice. She was in the room with my sister, and as I was venting to my sister, I would have gone no contact at 18 if it wasn't for my dad. Can we please stop talking about it now? I've dealt with so much crap from her, but that's for another day. Not the jerk. Start looking for a new job now, and when they ask when you can start, list it for the day you're done with the wedding festivities. This woman must have a lot of backup options for childcare if she can so casually threaten your job like that and talk to you in that way. She must be used to getting her way to do such a 180 on you like that. You can be the one to teach her this valuable lesson about valuing an employee nice enough to give extensive notice in advance when they won't be able to be on the job. After all, you gave her plenty of notice along with reminders, and the fact that she's in the lurch now is because she didn't respect you and your personal time enough to make plans for this time months ago. While it's true that you do sometimes have to suck it up as an adult, that time is not when you've given your employer more than half a year's notice that you'll need this specific time off. It's very much being an adult to prioritize your sister's wedding over a job that doesn't value you enough to respect that you had arranged this time off months ago. Ugh, it makes me so sad that OP's mom is this brainwashed too. Does she really think OP is in the wrong here? This fear that you can be fired any moment for not doing whatever insane thing your boss asks of you is so real for a lot of people because it's true. You can be fired at any moment for almost any reason / no reason in the good old greatest country on earth. I'm glad more people are realizing they don't need to accept this crap. OP, you're part of a changing labor movement. Learn your worth now and don't let your next employer treat you like this. You know it was an empty threat too. What is she going to do on Monday if she fires you? Between that and the yelling and the guilt trip, you know she's desperate for help. Nobody likes being taken advantage of. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you cave in to what your boss wants, or would you go to your sister's wedding? Please let us know. I'd give that boss a piece of my mind. She'd definitely fire me by the time I was done with her. Won't compensate me for my fence? Then compensate me 100 times as much for my crops. The malicious compliance in this story is not mine, it's my brother-in-law's. Some of the details may be slightly off, but the overall story is true. My brother-in-law grows avocados in California. Several years ago, a portion of his ranch was ravaged by a wildfire, or so he thought at first. When the smoke cleared, it became obvious that the fire was caused by an electrical line that was blown over by strong winds and had landed on his fence, catching it on fire. Since he had been planning on diversifying his crops anyway, he decided he'd simply replace his fence, replant, and move on. To that end, he called up the electric company that owned the downed line and asked them for about $10,000 in compensation to replace the fence that had been destroyed by their electrical line. They denied any and all culpability in the matter and told him that he should sue them if he didn't like it. What the electric company didn't realize was that my sister, his wife, works full-time as a corporate attorney for one of the largest utilities in California, defending against cases just like this one. At first, she was concerned that this utility was a subsidiary of her employer, in which case there would be a massive conflict of interest. Apparently, legal departments frown on their employees when their husband is suing them. Go figure. Thankfully, after some investigation, she realized that the utility in question was completely independent of her employer, and at that point, the gloves were off. My sister didn't represent her husband because she's typically on the other side of the cases, but she did advise him on everything he needed to bring to court to win his case, and she helped him find a very reputable lawyer with a solid record of winning cases like this. Not knowing what they were up against, the utility persisted in refusing to negotiate, hoping that by forcing my brother-in-law to trial, he would simply give up and go away. Spurred on by my sister's insistence that he had a solid case, he called their bluff and went to trial. As it turns out, California takes agricultural damage very seriously, and the court conducted its own independent investigation. It estimated the total damages at around $335,000, which is over 33 times as much as my brother-in-law had asked for initially. Furthermore, there's a law in California that awards triple damages in cases where agriculture is impacted. So the utility that had been unwilling to negotiate over $10,000 was now on the hook for over $1 million in damages. When all was said and done, my brother-in-law confided to me that he would have gladly settled for the $10,000 in arbitration, and that it would have probably taken him over a decade to even sell $1 million worth of crops. The utility had to have their day in court though. My kid's teacher tried to steal her phone. My spouse, 41 male, and I, 41 female, have a kid that we'll call Hannah, who's 15. Last week, I picked up Hannah, and she said that one of her teachers, we'll call her Miss K, took her phone for looking at it during class. I told her she needed to keep her phone in her pocket during class. Then Hannah tells me that Miss K still hasn't returned it. I thought that was a little weird, but whatever. Get it tomorrow. Every day after, Hannah tells me that she asked for it back and Miss K refuses. On Thursday, I sent her an email asking when we can expect the phone back and that I would like her to have it for when she works this weekend. No reply. A whole week of this passes. Today, Hannah gets in my car and tells me she asked and Miss K didn't even answer. She just ignored her. I lost my patience and went into the school. I found Miss K standing outside her classroom and told her it was time she give me the phone back. She tells me that Hannah needs to learn to stop using her phone in class, and I tell her that I agree and that she can take her phone away every day in her class if she feels she needs to, but it's not acceptable for her to just keep the phone for this long. I made a scene. Students and teachers alike were staring, but she relented and said she would get the phone out of her office and came back with it about 3 minutes later. I feel like an idiot for not checking the phone when she handed it to me. I didn't give Hannah back her phone from my purse until she was done with her assignments for today, and a couple minutes after, she comes back to me in a panic. 2 things were wrong. 1, the screen was cracked and it wasn't before. 2, she had to re-log into her Apple ID, which we thought was odd. She then looked at her account settings and saw a second Apple ID with Miss K's full name and avatar. We think she may have merged the data or something too, because there are contacts we don't recognize on the phone. I lost it. Told Hannah she can't use the phone for now because I'm worried Miss K has access to anything on her end, and sent an email to her demanding an explanation. There has not been a reply. I'm seriously considering reporting her to the administration and having her pay for the screen repair, but my husband thinks that that will cause her to retaliate on our daughter and that I might have overstepped by confronting her today. He also thinks it's possible she may have made a mistake and accidentally thought she was on her own iPhone or something, and that his IT guy could help with separating the IDs. He thinks we should let it go now that the phone is returned. I agree that he might be right about Miss K retaliating and I might be overreacting, but I'm having a hard time accepting the state that she returned Hannah's phone and just letting things go. Would I be the jerk if I report her? Not the jerk. Report this. The teacher took the phone for a week, damaged it, and had the audacity to log themselves in as if they owned it, and they refused to hand it to you initially. Report this ASAP. Not the jerk. You need to report her immediately. The teacher refused to give your daughter's phone back because she was using it herself. In fact, I think in many places it's actually illegal to not give back the confiscated item at the end of the day. I don't know what your husband is thinking, but there's no way that teacher accidentally used your daughter's phone. If I picked up a phone, I would immediately know it was not mine. Get that IT guy to immediately help with separating the IDs and ask them exactly what the teacher did on your daughter's phone. Use that as evidence when filing a complaint. Your husband thinking they should just leave it alone is ridiculous. It will send a message to his daughter that you will let someone mistreat their possessions and do nothing. She won't thank you for it. If daughter can be moved from that teacher's class, I would. Some have said maybe the teacher swapped phones. Even if she didn't, get more security on your daughter's phone. Password or pattern or fingerprint security, or a combination of the two of them. Am I the jerk for leaving a $0 tip at a restaurant? So my wife, who's 34, forgets her ID, and I, 33 male, order a drink at our restaurant we frequent often. Obviously, they wouldn't serve my wife a drink because she couldn't present an ID. We could be considered regulars with how often we are there. Regularly spend $150 to $200 a night and tip 20 to 30%. The people working tonight are not the regular staff. My wife has maybe 3 sips of my drink, not in front of the server, and I want to order another. The server refuses to give me another because he says we're sharing drinks and watching our table like we're some kids. Mind you, the whole time he sets up people in the restaurant to police us and watch our table when he can't. Barely gives any service, except when we're done with our food. I have no problem with them not serving my wife because yes, the law says you can't if they don't have ID. But you deny me, a grown 33-year-old man with a wedding ring on a second drink? Even if the board is there and they check to make sure people who are drinking are ID'd, they're not going to make a fuss if someone has a sip who is obviously over 21. None of your business what happens at our table. You're not top flight security. Left a 0 tip. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. It's your wife's fault, not the server. Alcohol laws are strict, and businesses can lose their license over people like you. Then you leave no tip for someone making $3 an hour because your wife forgot her ID? But he had a wedding ring. He's a big boy. Don't they know you can't get married when you're under 21? OP, you're the jerk. I work in a senior living community, and we have to card guests occasionally. It's just part of the rules. You're the jerk. If you forgot your ID, you can't drink. Your wife forgot her ID. You should have either gone back for it or not ordered drinks. The restaurant could lose its license for serving you without an ID. I wouldn't go back to that restaurant, by the way. You made a fuss over your mistake and then didn't tip. And if you go back to that restaurant, your food will be 80% spit by volume. Wow, I get that OP is a jerk, but why are people in this comment section talking pridefully about committing an actual crime, and one that's particularly egregious in an era of ongoing lockdown in response to no tip? You're the jerk. I was a server for 22 years, and anytime someone no-tipped me, I made sure to let the kitchen know next time so they could add some secret sauce to their food. If you only knew what some of the liquids were that we stored in the back to add to people like you and your wife's food, you'd literally pop open one of the jars and the entire kitchen would gag. Edit. Funny how some commenters are acting like messing with customers' food is such a bad thing. Trust me, I've worked at plenty of restaurants throughout my career, and at each and every one, we knew exactly how to handle customers like you. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk or not? Please let us know. I think the biggest jerk is that server who's been spitting in people's food for 20 years. Why we wash our hands. So have you ever seen someone that works retail and washes their hands religiously? Allow me to give you a prime example as to why. So I used to work in my store's phone center, which is right by the front door. Since it was located so close to our most used entry, it would sometimes get pretty warm with the doors constantly opening for all the people coming in and out. So we had a little fan on our counter by the register, but behind a divider, so it was out of the view of customers. So I was working up there one day and had this old guy, 60 to 65 maybe, come in for me to help him with his phone. As he came in, I noticed he looked kind of sweaty, which was understandable as it was a fairly hot day. I also thought his hair looked kind of sweaty, but no, his hair was just extremely greasy, to the point that I saw it literally dripping. It was so wet from grease that it looked like he had dunked his head in water about 30 seconds before walking into the store. He gets to the counter and I attempted to greet him as I do for all customers, but I had to stop and pause halfway through to suppress the immediate urge to instantly throw up when his smell hit me. So it probably sounded something like, "Hi, how can I help you?" I'm not exaggerating when I say it smelled like someone had taken a porta potty that had been used for a week at a state fair, dumped it in the middle of a highway for a week during an extreme heat wave, and then this guy came along and rolled around in it. Also, he brought flies in with him, as in they followed him in, like at least 5 or 6 of them. It's not a stretch to say that smelling raw sewage would have been preferable. I subtly pointed the fan as much towards him and away from me as I could without making it obvious, so it would be blowing the nose hair singeing smell away from me, and tried to continue as best I could, while leaning as far back as I could without looking like I was trying to get away from him. He told me his phone wasn't calling out and he wanted me to fix it. Now, normally I don't have a problem holding a phone if a customer hands it to me, but this phone was the most disgusting thing I had ever seen. He told me how he had only bought it a couple months prior, when he pulled out a flip phone that was supposed to be black in color. What he actually pulled out was something that was once upon a time most likely black, but now was one giant stain that was covered in dry drops of brownish mystery liquids. It also had a yellowed screen, which should not be able to happen in the very short span of a couple of months that he had it. I told him to just set it on the counter for me. I used my only fingertips to touch his phone and used speakerphone when I made a test call. I got his phone fixed and sent him off all happy. Then I looked at my fingertips that I had used, and I'm not kidding when I say it looked like I had been handling a rusty nail for hours, at which point I once again almost threw up. Suffice to say, I used almost an entire bottle of hand sanitizer, then went to the restroom to scrub my hands till every bit of brown was off and my hands were completely red, then another hand drenching of sanitizer. I now impulsively sanitize my hands after every customer, regardless of whether or not I've touched anything from them. So next time you see someone who obsessively is washing or sanitizing their hands, just let them. You never know what crap they might have been through. We had someone come in to have someone look at her phone. She dropped it off, then casually said she would wait for us to work on it from home since she had such a bad staph infection. Phone was slid into a box with some cut-up cardboard and given to a manager to deal with. Then everything she touched was sanitized. Another time we opened a phone and out dropped some bugs. So yeah, so much sanitizer. Am I the jerk for telling my brother's wife that their wedding was not that good? My brother and his wife got married 2 weeks ago. His wife is one of those people who love K-pop, and as you guessed, much of the music in the wedding involved K-pop. We come from traditional Balkan families, both sides, and we expected some traditions to be honored. Traditional music, foods, practices. My brother didn't care about all that, and his wife was completely against it as well. We barely danced any traditional dances at all. Despite that, our side of the family tried to make the most out of it, and we tried to have fun. The bride's family on the other side was boring. They were very snobbish, barely getting up to interact with people as if they were better than everyone. They did have fun with their friends, as they said, but family-wise, the wedding was a disaster for the rest of us and not enjoyable in the slightest. My sister-in-law kept bragging about how perfect her wedding was and how much fun she had. Anyone could hear that and think it was the event of the year. I just couldn't stand her making a fool of herself, and I decided to be honest. And I told her, hey, since nobody's going to be honest with you, I will be. The wedding was not that good or special. It was different, but not in a good way. Stop going around bragging about your successful wedding planning when both families dreaded every second of it. It's embarrassing. My mother lost it on me and told me I was out of line and demanded I apologize. I said I'm not apologizing for my honest opinion. His wife then tried to defend her stance by saying how much fun she had, my brother had, and how her friends adored it and said it was the best wedding they've ever attended. I told her that they should attend one of those K-pop events then, not plan a wedding. I realized I might have been out of line after my mom called me to scold me for saying those words. She said I was right, but it's not something I should say out loud or hurt people's feelings. I tried to tell her I was just trying to be honest, because nobody else would be, and everyone just let her make a fool of herself. You're the jerk. She enjoyed her wedding. That's what's important. You sound incredibly rude. She wasn't making a fool out of herself. Grow up. Exactly. The only one who embarrassed themselves is OP and their big mouth. You're the jerk. I look forward to the day where, as a society, we learn that I was just being honest, or it's just my opinion, are not excuses to say whatever you want without repercussions. Being honest or giving your opinion, especially when it's negative, when no one asked for it, is just being mean. It's okay to have an opinion and then lock it up inside your head. And honesty isn't a virtue when it's done with the intention to hurt someone. Am I the jerk for serving my husband's family mac and cheese for dinner? My husband is Asian and I'm American. We welcomed our firstborn 4 weeks ago. The baby is healthy, but I'm exhausted, haven't fixed my hair, barely able to shower, and cannot sleep. My husband's family had been pressuring us to visit to meet the baby. I tried to hold them off as much as I could, but yesterday I was surprised to find them standing on the porch. Turns out, hubby invited them for dinner. I was embarrassed and felt like I wasn't ready for visitors, judgmental ones at that, because the house was a mess. Anyways, my husband sat with them while I fed my son. Then later I asked my husband if we should order takeout for dinner. He said no, because his parents would find this rude and unwelcoming. He suggested that I go into the kitchen and prepare something, anything as long as it's homemade. I said fine then, went and made some mac and cheese. The reason I prepared this meal is because of how easy it is. Once I served the family, my husband's mom looked at me and was appalled. I noticed something was wrong. She asked if I really found it appropriate to serve her and the family mac and cheese. I asked why not, and she went on a rant about how disrespectful this was and that I clearly have no experience in what is right and wrong when it comes to hosting. I said, "Excuse me? Who said I signed up to host an unexpected visit from them?" And she took it as in I didn't want them there. Her husband said they were just there to finally see the baby that I kept them from seeing for an entire month. That's a whole month of his life they missed out on. We had an argument and they decided to go home. My husband said that deciding to serve his family mac and cheese was more offensive than serving them nothing at all. I told him I was too exhausted to cook their traditional feasts, that I was forced to learn from his mom. He took offense and said that I was being mean and disrespectful towards not only his family, but his culture. I went inside the bedroom to stay with my son. My husband stayed on the phone with his family for an hour, then kept giving me the cold shoulder and refused to eat what I cook in support of his family. I understand how some guests might find it offensive, especially his family, but I was just trying to make a quick homemade meal like my husband wanted. What's wrong with mac and cheese? Edit. Okay, so I'm seeing some commenters here offering to come over for some mac and cheese. It's amazing to hear that some people here would appreciate this kind of meal. It kind of makes me feel relieved and reassures me that I didn't mess this up entirely. Come on in, y'all. I'll be more than happy to serve you some mac and cheese. Some of y'all even offered to bring mashed potatoes and pizza. Would love to have y'all over sometime. This isn't a culture clash. These people are just jerks. There isn't an Asian culture I'm aware of that doesn't practice some form of postpartum confinement where it's expected that the new mother do nothing other than rest and bond with the baby. If they were so traditional, they should have showed up with food, offered to clean the house, and run a load of laundry while they're at it. Not the jerk, by the way. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her in-laws? Please let us know. If you don't like homemade mac and cheese, you might want to get your taste buds checked. Am I the jerk for revealing we're rich when my wife constantly tells people that we're broke and makes me look bad with money? I, 31 male, have been with my wife, 30 female, for 10 years now, and she's always had this habit of making me look bad with our finances. Whenever anything regarding spending money comes up, she will always say how broke we are, and she doesn't have the money to do this or buy that. The thing is, we are doing well financially. We have decent jobs, and combined, our salary is roughly $125K per year. As of today, our net worth is more than $1 million, but less than $2 million. I had saved and invested a lot before getting married, so I gave us a good head start. I control the finances and take the lead, but we both agreed to living a very modest life. We both have our cars from college, for example, Honda and Toyota. She knows everything about our finances because at least once a month I go over it with her every time I deposit money in our investment accounts or our kids' college funds. For banking, we have an emergency fund and I budget everything else to go straight into investments. We basically stay right at $10,000 in our bank savings account and $500 in our checking account after bills. Edit. Most of the time there's more than $500 in our checkings, but once I pay our credit card each month, I then move anything extra. We always use the credit card, so it's not like we only have $500 to spend. Our credit card limit is $25,000. A few months ago, we had dinner with her friends and they talked about buying a new car. My wife said something like, "I wish we could get a new car, but I'm always broke after paying the bills. We still have our college cars." Edit. Wife does not want a new car. She will go on to talk about if she had money what she would want to buy, and it always makes me feel ashamed. This "I'm broke" story has been happening for years. When we were driving home, I asked her about it. She understood we have the money, but it's how she feels because our bank account is always low. I said I can increase our budget or keep more money in our bank if she wants. Since we are doing well, I'm okay with spending more. She said no and again was happy with our finances. I explained that when she says we are broke, it makes me look bad and I feel ashamed. It's as though I can't provide for the family and/or I'm bad with money. She doesn't see it that way. The same conversation has come up numerous times about us being broke. Recently, I reminded her numerous times it makes me feel and look bad in front of friends and family. I told her if she keeps saying stuff like that, I will reveal that we are doing well with money. I gave her a few reminders I'd eventually do this, but she kept going with the "I'm broke" story. At a dinner with her sister and parents, the same "I'm broke" story came up. I piped in and said, "It's weird to hear a millionaire say they're broke." My wife said, "Haha, I'm not though." And I quickly say, "We are millionaires and you know that. We go over our finances every month." Well, the "I'm broke" story stopped after that and the night went on as usual. A little later, the same thing happens with our friends and I use the same line. Now my wife is mad at me for using that line and revealing roughly how much money we have. She said it seems like I'm gloating. I say it's better than making me look like I'm running us into the ground financially. So, am I the jerk for revealing our net worth when my wife says we are broke? Edit. Final update for now as we have a long weekend planned. Some key points I saw a lot of people talking about and wanted to give answers. I'm pretty open to us spending money and I don't restrict her spending. She has the credit card to spend money monthly. Most of the month we have far more than $500 in our checking, but I move anything above to our investments once I pay the credit card each month. I know I won't have any big expenses then. If I do, we have the credit card limit and the $10,000 emergency cash. We live in a really cheap area and have a low cost of living. We never felt the need to upgrade until we wanted to start having kids. I didn't have to change our lifestyle much to save a lot. My job is in demand and pays well because nobody wants to live out in my area. So after expenses, I take home a lot more than I would living in a major city. Probably 3 to 4 times more net savings annually if I had to guess. She doesn't want a new car and has told me that multiple times. She doesn't like driving and feels comfortable with her current car. She doesn't know what she wants to do when she retires. I know I'll be golfing, games, and eating treats most days. I don't do any of this much now because we have kids, and they will be my focus for a long time. I maybe golf 1 or 2 times a month, and that's the only time I have my treats. I'll speak more with my wife about this. After reading posts, I think she may not feel like it's her money since she never saved much before we got engaged. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.